Chapter 555. You don't believe me? I do. Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifun's face. To be honest, Hui Yifun wasn't bad-looking. Most importantly, she liked the ambition in his eyes. However, I feel that in the end you might become mine. Really? Why don't we wait and see? Hui Yifun was more and more interested in Su Peijian. No problem. Su Peijian smiled brightly. She thought of something and found it funny. Su Qingsang, aren't you relying on the Hua family? I'll let you know now. You're not the only one who can marry into the Hua family. I can too. I don't know how much the Hua family will be stirred up by the two of us. I'm looking forward to it. Achoo. After dinner, Su Qingsang, who was browsing Weibo in the living room, sneezed. Hua Jinyao turned to look at her. Are you not feeling well? Did you catch a cold? I don't think so. Su Qingsang touched her nose and felt that the sneeze was a bit strange. You don't? I think you caught a cold because you took care of me 2 days ago. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang's face and couldn't see anything wrong. Why don't you stop going to work tomorrow and rest at home? You're exaggerating. Su Qingsang glanced at him. I think my mother misses me. I'm going to call my mom later. I don't have anything to do. Why should I rest? Meeting Hua Jinyao's disapproving look, Su Qingsang couldn't help but laugh. Don't always think of me as a woman like a doll. I'm in good health. Last time you were sick, I took care of you for so long and slept in the same bed with you. I was fine, wasn't I? Hua Jinyao suddenly approached her and said, Honey, are you asking for credit? Can't I ask for credit? Su Qingsang raised her eyebrows and joked with him. After that day she didn't ask about Lu Tongjia again. To her, since Hua Jinyao didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't ask. She didn't want to ask old Master Hua either. Because she thought of another possibility. If what Lu Tongjia said was true, what should she do? Why did Hua Jinyao have nightmares all these years? After all, he was only 12 years old. If he had done something wrong or said something wrong in a moment of desperation in order to save his own life, wouldn't it be understandable under such circumstances? That day, old Master Hua looked like he wanted to say something. Did that mean something? Old Master Hua actually knew whether it was possible or not. However, she had already lost 2 grandsons. She didn't want to lose Hua Jinyao as well. After understanding these things, he had these worries in his heart. Su Qingsang didn't want to ask any more. No matter what choice an underage child made in that kind of situation, she thought it should be understandable, right? Could they all be forgiven? She could understand Lu Tongjia's stubbornness. So let's leave it at that for now. She looked at Hua Jinyao and put that matter aside. He did not mention that matter at all. She didn't mention it and neither did Hua Jinyao. The two of them didn't mention that matter, but they felt much closer to each other. Just like now. Hua Jinyao put his mouth close to her ear and said in a low voice, Then honey, how do you want me to thank you? Su Qingsang felt the heat of his breath brushing against her ear. She shrunk her neck a little. To be honest, Hua Jinyao's masculinity was fatal. Especially when he was talking to her in such a low voice. Stay away from me. I'm afraid I can't. Hua Jinyao put one hand around her waist. Speaking of which, I'm really lucky. I've married such a good wife. How can I not get closer? Don't you think so? Su Qingsang blushed. She put her hands on Hua Jinyao's chest and said, You haven't recovered from your cold yet. Aren't you afraid that I'll infect you? Hua Jinyao kissed her on the lips as if he was teasing her. Because of his playful attitude, Su Qingsang couldn't help but bite his lips. This bite ignited the fire. Hua Jinyao picked her up and put her on his lap. Honey, if you really catch a cold because of me, then you can't blame me. As he spoke, he had already picked up Su Qingsang and walked towards the bedroom. Su Qingsang sat in the car, feeling a little flustered. This feeling came out of nowhere. She subconsciously raised her hand to cover her heart. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Hua Jinyao drove the car. The Hua family's old house was not far ahead. Su Qingsang's expression suddenly changed. He sped up and drove into the Hua family's house. After parking the car, he turned around and looked at her with a worried face. Did I really infect you with a cold? No. Su Qingsang shook her head gently. I don't know why, but I keep feeling flustered. Flustered? Yes. I just feel like something is going to happen. It was such a strange feeling. Su Qingsang looked at Hua Jinyao and said, Do you think something will happen? What could happen? He had already driven Ding Qing away. Now all the people he could use were people he trusted. Hui Yifun had recently negotiated a good project. The contract was about to be signed, and he was almost in a position to do whatever he wanted in the company. His vice president seemed to be more powerful than Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao saw it but didn't say anything. Some things really depended on who could laugh in the end. As for other things, what else could there be? Su Qingsang had just called Li Qianxue yesterday. The company was getting better. She didn't hear anything from Li Qianxue. Nothing. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Let's go. Let's get out of the car. As Su Qingsang spoke, she reached out to push the car door open, and the two of them entered the house together. Not long after they entered the house, a Bugatti Veyron also drove in. That car was Hua Yifan's. Today the Hua family was all here. Hua Mingguang's family, Hua Mingliang's family, and Hua Mingmei's family were all here. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao weren't the first to arrive. When they entered the house, Hua Mingmei's family was already sitting on the sofa in the living room. When she saw Su Qingsang, the corners of Hua Mingmei's mouth twitched, and an obvious look of disdain flashed across her eyes. However, she had been warned by old Master Hua recently, so her emotions flashed quickly and were almost invisible. Wei Siming and Wei Sihai wouldn't take the initiative to make friends with Su Qingsang. They were usually close to Hua Manzi. Speaking of which, they could be considered Hua Mingliang's group. Hua Mingliang and his wife, Nian Chuanya Hua Yang, and Hua Manzi sat on the other side. Su Qingsang glanced around and didn't see Hua Yifan, but she didn't care. The Hua family's gathering wasn't always full. She went up and greeted the elders one by one. When facing Lu Tongjia, Su Qingsang's expression was still indifferent. Lu Tongjia didn't like her, but she didn't always have to warm up to them. It was rare that Lu Tongjia was easy to talk to. She didn't say sarcastic words like the previous few times. However, Su Qingsang could feel that Lu Tongjia's expression was even more unpleasant. She seemed to have something on her mind. Her face was a little gloomy. Nian Chuanya had been talking to her, but she didn't seem to hear her. Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were sitting together, but there was almost half an arm's length between them. This was also impossible in the past. Could it be that there was something wrong with the couple? She subconsciously glanced at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao gave her a look, signaling her to leave it alone. Of course, Lu Tongjia didn't look good. After all, her plan had been ruined by him. Ding Qing had left, and Lu Tongjia didn't have anyone she could use. She had never wanted to be Wu Ziqian before, and she had never placed people in Tianyu group. If she only relied on Hua Mingguang, he would consider the big picture no matter what he wanted to do. Hua Jinyao didn't do much. He just asked someone to more or less tell Hua Mingguang about Xiao Hong. It was true that Hua Mingguang doted on Lu Tongjia, and it was also true that he had feelings for Lu Tongjia. He didn't even stop Lu Tongjia from hurting Hua Jinyao. But it didn't mean that he would let Lu Tongjia do whatever she wanted. There were too many variables in selling the company's secrets, even if it was a lie. What if Xiao Hong wasn't reliable? What if he took the company's secrets and went to a rival company? This time, Hua Mingguang didn't want to help Lu Tongjia. After throwing a tantrum in front of Lu Tongjia spent a lot of effort to pacify Lu Tongjia. However, Hua Mingguang obviously didn't intend to forgive her. The atmosphere between the couple was very low and everyone could see it. However, Hua Jinyao said not to interfere, so Su Qingsang didn't care. The two of them chose a seat near Old Master Hua and sat down. There was no one else sitting next to Old Master Hua. That seat had always been reserved for Hua Jinyao. He took Su Qingsang to sit next to him and the others were used to it. However, Hua Manzi couldn't hide the jealousy in her eyes. They were all children of the Hua family. Why did Old Master Hua only love Hua Jinyao? In terms of contributions to the company, her two brothers should have done a lot, right? Hua Jinyao was already used to those people's gazes. He talked to Old Master Hua and didn't care about the others. Su Qingsang sat next to him and occasionally said a few words. Then she heard Uncle Cheng say that the second young master was here. The second young master was Hua Yifan. He arrived later than usual. Su Qingsang didn't have a good impression of Hua Yifan, so she was sitting with her back to the door. Hearing Uncle Cheng's words, she politely turned her head to look behind her. "I'm sorry. I'm late." Hua Yifan apologized, but the expression on his face was one of pride. "I'm sorry. I should have come earlier, but today is a special day. I have someone to introduce to Grandpa, so I went to pick them up. I was delayed on the way. Grandpa, please don't take it to heart." He seemed to be holding someone's hand and walking inside. He was quite tall. The figure was blocked behind him. Su Qingsang didn't see the person's face at first glance. Chapter 556. Although the Hua family didn't value disciples, they valued rules. Old Master Hua didn't care who Hua Yifan brought back, but he had to inform him in advance. It was a good thing that his grandson had found a girlfriend and was willing to settle down. Old Master Hua was naturally happy. When he asked, he looked behind Hua Yifan. There was a hint of expectation in his eyes. Hui Yifan openly admitted that he was late. Yes. I went to pick her up just now. Grandpa. This is my girlfriend. As he spoke, Hui Yifan took 2 steps inside. The figure he was holding took a few steps forward because of his movement and walked directly to his side from behind Hui Yifan. It also successfully let everyone see her face clearly. Su Qingsang didn't expect Hui Yifan to choose such a time to bring his girlfriend back to the Hua family. It seemed that he was serious. However, when she saw the face that suddenly appeared at the door, she was completely stunned. At the same time, Hui Yifan said softly to Old Master Hua, "Grandpa, this is Su Peijian. She's my girlfriend. Peijian, this is my grandpa." Su Peijian? How could it be Su Peijian? Su Qingsang couldn't hide the shock on her face. Hua Jinyao also had a flash of surprise in his eyes. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Su Peijian and Hui Yifan with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Su Peijian took a few steps forward and stood in front of the Hua family. She didn't have stage fright at all. Like Hui Yifan, she looked at Old Master Hua and bowed. "Hello, Grandpa Hua." As she spoke, she took out a not-so-small box from behind her and placed it in front of Old Master Hua. "Grandpa Hua, I don't know what you like. Yifan suddenly said that he wanted to bring me to see you, and I didn't prepare anything. It's just a small gift. Grandpa Hua, I hope you don't mind." Su Peijian's appearance was delicate and pretty. Usually, elders wouldn't like such an appearance. However, before she came today, she deliberately tidied herself up. She was wearing a decent long-sleeve dress with a fragrant blazer on the outside. She looked much more mature, and her attitude was friendly and polite. Old Master Hua had a good impression of her. Good. It's good that he's here. Why is there a need for gifts? Although he said that, Old Master Hua did not refuse and accepted the gift from the other party. Of course. Su Peijian hooked her arm around Hui Yifan's. "I often hear Yifan mention you. He often says that the person he admires and respects the most is you, Grandpa. I'm so envious of him for having such a good grandfather." Really? Old Master Hua wasn't a person who liked to listen to flattery, but Su Peijian had a sweet tongue and used Hui Yifan to praise him, which made him smile a little more. "Of course it is. After hearing what Yifan said, I can't wait to see you, Grandpa Hua." Su Peijian nodded heavily. There was not a trace of arrogance on her face, not even a trace of the arrogance she had when she was with Hui Yifan. Her eyes were gentle and her voice was sweet. She looked like a well-bred lady from a respectable family. Seeing this, Hui Yifan, who had been a little worried before, completely relaxed. From the corner of his eye, he couldn't help but look in Hua Jinyao's direction. He wasn't the only one who had a taste for women. His taste was not worse than Hua Jinyao's. It wasn't that Hua Jinyao hadn't interacted with Su Peijian before. In the few times they had met, Su Peijian either had a high and mighty look on her face, or she looked flustered and exasperated because she failed to deal with them. Not to mention him, even Su Qingsang, who grew up with Su Peijian, had never seen her like this before. At this time she looked at her half-sister. No, she should be his younger sister now. She couldn't help but be speechless. What was Su Peijian trying to do? When Hui Yifan turned his face, he happened to see Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang's shocked expressions. He felt a burst of pride in his heart, and he couldn't help but look a little smug. However, there were more important things in front of him. Hui Yifan didn't want to be entangled with these two couples that he disliked. "Peijian, come, let me introduce you to the other members of the Hua family." "Okay." Su Peijian nodded. The smile at the corner of her mouth suddenly changed when she saw Su Qingsang sitting next to Hua Jinyao. "Sister?" After saying this, she immediately covered her mouth, as if she realized that she had said something wrong. She suddenly looked at Hui Yifan helplessly. That "sister" wasn't a soft call. Moreover, no matter how big the living room was, the group of people sitting together naturally heard it clearly. "What did you call her?" Hui Yifan was stunned for a moment, and his somewhat suspicious gaze fell between Su Qingsang and Su Peijian. He seemed to have just realized that Su Peijian's surname was Su, and Su Qingsang's surname was also Su. His expression changed for a moment. Su Peijian seemed to be frightened. She looked at Su Qingsang and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Su. I shouldn't have called you sister." As she spoke, her body leaned against Hui Yifan's side without a trace, and her face seemed to be a little scared. Su Qingsang sat there without moving, just watching Su Peijian act there as if she was directing and acting herself. She had never seen Su Peijian act like this before, but now she had a rough idea of what Su Peijian was doing. Hua Jinyao sat next to Su Qingsang and reached out to gently pinch her palm. Su Qingsang glanced at him, and her fluctuating emotions strangely calmed down in an instant. No matter what Su Peijian wanted to do, she would just take it. Peijian, what the hell is going on? Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes. He looked at Su Qingsang and then at Su Peijian. Su Peijian's arrogance and domineering attitude from before, and her delicate side in front of Hui Yifan was like a little wife. Especially the way she looked at Su Qingsang, there was a hint of fear in her eyes. Su Qingsang didn't say anything and watched Su Peijian act. Her mood had calmed down and she was in the mood to watch her act. Really, she had never thought that Su Peijian had such acting skills before. It was a pity that she didn't enter the entertainment industry. Hu Jinyao and his wife weren't the only ones staring at Su Peijian, the others were also staring at her. Hua Mingmei narrowed her eyes as if she wanted to watch a good show. Lu Tongjia had been scolded by Hua Mingguang recently, and this made her feel even worse. She didn't like Su Qingsang, but she didn't like Su Peijian's attitude of not finishing her words. Su Peijian also knew that she couldn't keep people in suspense. Looking at Su Qingsang, she didn't hesitate and directly told the answer. Chapter 557. She's my sister. Su Peijian didn't look at Su Qingsang as she spoke. She bit her lip and looked hesitant. She seemed to be in a dilemma. Sister? The other members of the Hua family all pricked up their ears and stared at Su Peijian. Hua Manzi and Wei Siming looked at each other and looked at Su Qingsang as if they were watching a good show. She's your sister? The smile on old Master Hua's face faded a little. He knew about Su Qingsang's background. Someone who could call Su Qingsang's sister must be, she used to be my sister. Then she was my sister. But, Su Peijian bit her lip. She looked so wronged. She didn't look like the arrogant young lady of the Su family. She looked at Hui Yifan with an ambiguous look. Now, my sister probably doesn't want to acknowledge me. What she said was a little heart-wrenching. Su Qingsang sat there and didn't move. She didn't even make a sound. Hui Yifan looked at Su Qingsang and was a little surprised by her calmness. After thinking for a while, he suddenly spoke. What did you do? You made sister-in-law not acknowledge you? Su Peijian shook her head gently and didn't want to say more. I don't know what I did wrong. I only know that after my sister married President Hua, my parents acknowledged her and then kicked me out of the house. Su Peijian was telling the truth but not the whole truth. However, as soon as she finished speaking, everyone looked at Su Qingsang. They were all smart people and could understand what Su Peijian meant almost immediately. To put it bluntly, the Su family was just a greedy and snobbish family. However, this also showed one thing, and that was that Su Qingsang was very capable. Otherwise, why would they not even acknowledge their own daughter? Hua Mingmei looked at Su Qingsang. She knew that this woman was not simple. Hua Manzi and the other juniors looked at each other, and when they looked at Su Qingsang again, their expressions changed. It was really a black bottle of soy sauce. They couldn't tell. I remember that sister-in-law seems to be an illegitimate daughter, right? As an illegitimate daughter, she didn't acknowledge her own sister. Hui Yifan's eyes flickered, and the meaning in his eyes was unclear. Illegitimate daughter? Who is the illegitimate daughter now? Su Qingsang didn't want to argue. After all, her biological father swapped the identities of his two daughters in a fit of anger was not very honorable. She had never thought of revealing this matter. No matter what, Su Qinghui was her biological father. This sister-in-law is really amazing. Hui Yifan didn't dare to say anything. Others didn't dare to say it, but it didn't mean that he didn't dare to say it either. Why is her identity different after marrying Big Brother? The others didn't respond, but Hua Mingmei didn't care. She was an elder. Speaking of which, I was surprised last time. Then why did the Su family come personally to pay a visit? Wasn't it just marrying an illegitimate daughter? Such a grand ceremony is really... He didn't finish his sentence, but no one was a fool. They all understood what he meant. Just as Hu Jinyao was about to say something, Su Qingsang pressed the back of his hand. This was her business. She didn't need Hu Jinyao's endorsement. Peijian. Grandpa misses you very much. He kept talking about you on his last birthday. Unfortunately, you didn't go. She didn't say how Su Peijian left, nor did she say whether Su Peijian was kicked out. It was enough for him to say this. Sure enough, Su Peijian's expression suddenly changed. Speaking of leaving the Li family, if there was anything she couldn't bear to part with, it was old Master Li. She knew that the old man really loved her. She actually knew about old Master Li's last birthday. She also thought about whether she should go back to Lin City to visit old Master Li, even if it was just a phone call. But in the end, she couldn't pass her own test. She didn't want to return to the Li family in such a miserable way. To put it bluntly, she didn't want people's sympathy. Especially from the sympathy and charity from the Li family. Grandpa has always missed you. Su Qingsang's voice was calm. His last birthday wasn't a big party and he didn't invite many people. He just wanted to have a family dinner together. Su Qingsang sighed softly, and her expression seemed to be a little emotional. But it's a pity that the family didn't come together. His birthday wasn't a perfect one. These days she often contacted Li Qianxue and Su Yusin. Li Qianxue wouldn't take the initiative to mention Su Peijian in front of her, but Su Yusin had mentioned it a few times. More than 20 years of feelings couldn't be lost just because you said so. But Su Peijian could be so cold-hearted. Not only did she not visit, she didn't even call. How could Li Qianxue accept this? How could she not be disappointed? No matter how much she missed Su Peijian, she wouldn't take the initiative to contact her. First, Li Qianxue was an elder and Su Peijian was a junior. If Su Peijian really recognized the Li family, she would take the initiative to contact them. Second, she didn't want to hurt Su Qingsang's heart again. Third, she didn't want Su Qinghui to be complacent. She didn't want Su Qinghui to think that he still had the power to balance her. Putting these reasons together, Li Qianxue couldn't contact Su Peijian, but she also didn't want to refuse Su Peijian's return. Even if Su Peijian recognized Xiang Kaiping, as long as she was willing to return to the Li family, there would definitely be a place for her in the Li family. These were all slowly figured out by Su Qingsang later. Su Peijian wasn't stupid. Of course she could hear it. Feeling everyone's gaze on her, she lowered her head, her half-lidded eyes concealing all her emotions. I thought there was no place for me in the family. I also thought that Grandpa wouldn't want to see me. After all. At this time, Su Peijian's eyes were already red. Mom said that she didn't have a daughter like me. She said that her daughter was you. She looked up at Su Qingsang, still unable to hide the grievance in her eyes. Sister, I know you're better than me. You married President Hua, so you're the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. It's normal that Mom doesn't like me. Su Qingsang suddenly felt a little upset. What nonsense was Su Peijian talking about? Why didn't she say that the reason why Li Qianxue didn't recognize her was because of Su Qinghui? Now she was insisting that she couldn't refute it. After all, she didn't want to ruin Su Qinghui's reputation. Su Peijian looked at Su Qingsang and didn't say anything. A trace of pride flashed in the depths of her eyes, and she turned to look at Hui Yifan. I'm sorry, Yifan. I think that you might not want to see me. I'd better leave first. Su Qingsang hadn't even said a word, and she had already put such a big blame on her in one breath. Hua Jinyao watched Su Peijian put on a pitiful look in front of the other Hua family members, and then looked at Hui Yifan. At the beginning he was shocked, but now he looked serious on the surface, but deep in his eyes he looked like he was watching a good show. That was also true. He and Su Qingsang had a tacit understanding about Su Qinghui, so he naturally knew what Su Qingsang was worried about. Unfortunately she had concerns, but he didn't. Don't you know why the Li family doesn't recognize you? Su Qingsang suddenly looked at Hua Jinyao, wanting to stop him. However, Hua Jinyao wouldn't let his wife be put in a difficult position without doing anything. Why doesn't the Su family recognize you? Su Peijian, don't you dare to say it now? Su Peijian had always known that her identity wouldn't be a secret. If she really wanted to investigate, she would find out. However, she thought that Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao didn't say it before because they had concerns. She didn't expect Hua Jinyao to ignore it. I don't know. She forced herself to calm down and looked at Hua Jinyao with her red eyes without blinking. I only know that ever since my sister married you, the Li family has been messed up by the two of you. I only know that because of you, my sister has confidence and courage. She also has the ability to make my parents kick me out of the family. There was no need to say the rest. Su Peijian had made it clear enough. She turned to look at Su Qingsang. I'm sorry, sister. I also know that you don't want to see me again. But Yifan and I, we can't help it. She turned to look at Hui Yifan with a pained expression. I'm sorry, Yifan. I know that you really want to marry me, so you brought me back to the Hua family to see your grandfather. But I lied to you. I'm actually not the eldest daughter of the Su family. I've been kicked out of the Su family. I'm just an abandoned daughter of the Su family now. Her eyes were red and filled with tears. The expression on her face was so aggrieved and pained. Hua Jinyao had never seen Su Peijian like this. He only felt that she was a completely different person from the beautiful woman who had sat on his lap. Even the way they talked was different. Su Peijian had never said that she was the eldest daughter of the Su family. When she appeared in front of him, her identity became a mystery. Hui Yifan had thought of investigating her, but he preferred to conquer her first. He enjoyed the feeling of conquering, and he was also confident that everything was under his control. So when Su Peijian said that, he almost immediately realized what was going on. Peijian, please don't say that. I believe that you didn't do it on purpose. Su Peijian's lips moved. She seemed to want to say something but stopped on second thought. Hui Yifan held her hand. It's not your fault that you were kicked out of the Su family. It's not your fault that they abandoned you. It's someone else's fault. There was no need to say who that someone else was. I like you as a person not because of your identity. I believe that Grandpa won't care about your identity. Grandpa, don't you think so? He turned to look at old Master Hua with a sincere expression. He stood in front of Su Peijian, looking as if he would go through thick and thin with her. He looked so sincere that even Su Peijian couldn't tell if he was serious or just acting. The other members of the Hua family couldn't tell. However, everyone was looking at the two of them. From time to time they would turn their eyes back to Hu Jiniao and his wife. Chapter 558. Others didn't know about Su Qingsang's family background, but old Master Hua did. Hu Jiniao had told him about it as soon as he came back. Su Qingsang didn't say it out loud because she wanted to save Su Qinghui's face. But this Su Peijian. Now that Su Qingsang had become the eldest daughter of the Su family, Su Peijian would naturally become an illegitimate daughter. He had no problem with illegitimate daughters, and he could understand Su Qinghui's behavior of exchanging two children in a fit of anger. But now that he saw Su Peijian, old Master Hua had a different opinion of the Su family. It doesn't matter if you recognize your biological daughter, but this isn't your biological daughter. No matter what, you have raised her by your side for so many years. There must be feelings, right? Why did he have feelings for her? How could he be chased out so easily? He didn't think that what the Su family did was necessarily wrong. After all, Su Qinghui had lied to her for so many years. It was normal for her to refuse to acknowledge her daughter. But it was still a little cold. Of course, Su Qingsang might have played a part in it. Just as Su Peijian had said, Su Qingsang married Hu Jiniao. Then Hu Jiniao would become Su Qingsang's backer. Perhaps it was because they had such a backer that the Su family was so heartless. Half of it was to please Su Qingsang, and the other half was because he disliked Su Qinghui. Old Master Hua remained silent. For the other few hours he naturally did not speak either. Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes and glanced at Su Peijian. He had underestimated this woman. Su Peijian didn't mention that she was now an illegitimate daughter of the Su family. If he hadn't told his grandfather about it, he would have thought that the Su family was the kind of family that didn't recognize their own daughter in order to get on the Hua family's good side. What he didn't know was that although old Master Hua didn't think that way now, he more or less had some opinions about Su Qingsang and the Su family. So what if she was an illegitimate daughter? How many families in Rong City had illegitimate children? However, no one would raise an illegitimate daughter in their own home. If they really raised her by their side, then there was absolutely no reason to chase her out. Old Master Hua glanced at Hui Yifan. His voice was not as light as it had been when Su Peijian first came in. Feelings are your own business. I won't interfere with you. It's fine as long as you think it's good. This meant that he had no objections. Hu Jiniao glanced at old Master Hua. There was nothing wrong with his grandfather's attitude. If Hui Yifan wanted to be with someone, they were in no position to object. Hu Jiniao knew that, and so did Su Qingsang. However, neither of them were in a good mood. Especially Su Qingsang. Su Peijian never said the real reason why she was kicked out of the Li family. People who didn't know the truth might really think that it was because Hu Jiniao married her. Also, Su Peijian had been avoiding the question of her identity. She did not reveal her identity as an illegitimate daughter, only saying that she was a daughter who was chased out of the Su family. She wanted to clarify things with Su Peijian, but when she met old Master Hua's gaze, she couldn't bring herself to say anything else. Grandpa Hua didn't object to Su Peijian joining the Hua family, which meant that he accepted Su Peijian as a member of his family. If she opened her mouth now, she was afraid that the old man would be unhappy. She turned to look at Hu Jiniao. Hu Jiniao's expression was a little ugly. He looked at Su Peijian and was about to refute her words. Su Qingsang held his hand and gently shook her head at him. Some things needed to be fought for, but some things, there was no need. Since Su Peijian said that she was a daughter of the Su family, then she was a daughter of the Su family. If Su Peijian wanted to be with Hui Yifan, then let them be. Except for Su Peijian, no one else present saw Su Qingsang's action. Su Peijian lowered her head to hide the pride in her heart. She didn't need to do more today. She just needed to plant a seed in Su Qingsang's mind, a seed of doubt. As for the rest, she would leave it to time. Now her show wasn't over yet. Nian Chuanya and Hua Mingliang were Hui Yifan's parents, but now Grandpa Hua didn't object. Naturally they couldn't say anything. Nian Chuanya didn't come from a rich family, so she always liked to compare herself to Lu Tongjia. In the past years she had been suppressed by Lu Tongjia. When people talked about the Hua family's madam, very few people mentioned Nian Chuanya, but everyone knew Lu Tongjia. Of course it was also because of her husband. After all, Hua Mingliang was not as capable as his brother. He was only a director in Tianyu Group, but he had always been doing nothing. Lu Tongjia was indeed a scheming person. She had fought with Lu Tongjia several times, both openly and secretly, but she had always been defeated. She was holding back her anger in her heart. She was thinking about how to suppress Lu Tongjia. However, Lu Tongjia was stronger than her in every aspect. When it came to children, she gave birth to 3 children and so did Lu Tongjia. She had 2 boys and 1 girl and Lu Tongjia had 2 boys and 1 girl. To be honest, when the incident happened she felt a little lucky. She felt lucky that Hua Jinkai died early. Otherwise, Hua Jinkai would be much more favored than the 2 of them. Of course, Nian Chuanya never dared to show such thoughts in front of the other members of the Hua family. Especially after Old Master Hua explicitly forbade them from mentioning Hua Jinkai and his sister, it became a taboo in the Hua family. They couldn't mention it again. Hua Yifan was only 2 years older than Hua Jinyao. She had thought it was better. Hua Jinyao was not a serious person. He liked to play around. She could see that when he was young. With Hua Jinkai gone, Hua Yifan would have a chance. However, after Hua Jinkai left, Hua Jinyao seemed to have changed into a different person. He skipped a grade, went abroad to study and took over the company. Old Master Hua was full of praises for him. He had suppressed Hua Yifan and his sister. Lu Tongjia only had 1 son left. Speaking of which, there was nothing to be proud of at all. However, he had risen to the top and gained Old Master Hua's favor. Don't you think that Old Master Hua is biased? Now, Su Qingsang's parents kicked her sister out just because she married Hua Jinyao. What did that mean? Hua Jinyao had his ways. Su Peijian was not so good. Her silly son had thrown away someone who didn't want him. Thinking of this, Nian Chuanya's face darkened. When Su Peijian came over to greet them, her expression was indifferent, and it was obvious that she was unhappy. Su Peijian didn't mind being treated coldly. She still greeted Hua Mingliang and Nian Chuanya with the same attitude. Then Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia, then Hua Mingmei and Wei Nantian, and then the younger members of the family. In terms of etiquette, Su Peijian, who had been carefully trained by Li Qianxue, was absolutely impeccable. When Lu Tongjia saw Su Peijian earlier, she didn't think much of her. But after watching the good show just now, she finally understood what was going on. Chapter 559. Su Qingsang and Su Peijian didn't look like sisters. They looked more like enemies. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsang and then at Su Peijian. For the first time she looked at Su Peijian seriously. Before Su Peijian came, she had asked Hua Yifan about the Hua family. Hua Yifan also told her about Hua Mingguang and his wife, Hua Mingliang and his wife, and Hua Mingmei's family. However, Hua Yifan didn't have time to tell her that Lu Tongjia didn't like Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. However, she had been observing Lu Tongjia and Su Qingsang since she came in. After observing for so long she could basically make a judgment. If Nian Chuanya didn't like her, then Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qingsang either. Su Peijian finally had a smile on her face since she came to the Hua family. Su Qingsang, do you really think it's so easy to be the daughter-in-law of a rich family? You're really too naive. The elders didn't show it on their faces, but the younger generation had different thoughts. The routine dinner party began in such a strange atmosphere. Su Peijian knew that the real person in the family was Old Master Hua. Therefore, after sitting down, she didn't mention her family background. She only picked some interesting things to get close to Old Master Hua. Old Master Hua still had some sympathy for Su Peijian. It was true that he liked Su Qingsang, but that didn't stop him from sympathizing with Su Peijian. The roles had been reversed. She was originally the daughter of a rich family, but now she had become an illegitimate daughter. Not everyone could bear this kind of disparity. Su Peijian showed a little dissatisfaction at the beginning, and then didn't mention it again. In Old Master Hua's eyes, it was a sign of her true nature. After all, it was impossible to say that she didn't care at all after such a thing happened. However, it wasn't appropriate to keep harping on the past. It was just right like this. Hua Yifan had been paying attention to Old Master Hua's expression. He was surprised and proud that Su Peijian could please Old Master Hua. See, Hua Jinyao wasn't the only one who knew how to pick women. He knew how to pick women too. Nian Chuanya didn't like Su Peijian at first, but seeing that she could please Old Master Hua, she stopped looking down on Su Peijian. Hua Yang knew what had happened to Su Peijian in the past. This woman's current behavior was completely different from before, and he was greatly impressed. I didn't expect my brother's taste to be so good. She found Su Qingsang's sister as soon as she started searching. The meal was especially quiet. Silence referred to the others. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were also watching Su Peijian's performance. Su Peijian had been with old Master Li since she was a child. If she wanted to please an elder, it would be a piece of cake for her. In the beginning, old Master Hua only felt pity for her, but after the meal, it became 60%. It was getting late by the time they finished eating. Su Peijian was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, she said that she wanted to play chess with old Master Hua. When I was at home, I often played with my grandfather. Su Qingsang sat next to Hua Jinyao and watched Su Peijian play chess with old Master Hua. The two of them went back and forth. Her chess skills were not bad. After a while, old Master Hua became serious. His love for Su Peijian had become 80%. Su Qingsang watched as old Master Hua changed his attitude towards Su Peijian in a short period of time. She was not jealous, but she remembered something. Li Qianxue truly loved Su Peijian. Although she spoiled her, she had also raised her according to the standards of a lady from a wealthy family. The four arts, chess, calligraphy and painting, as well as the ways of the world. Those were things that she had missed and could not make up for. Li Qianxue's painstaking efforts over the past 20 years had been exchanged for Su Peijian. But now, Su Peijian. She had mixed feelings until she left the Hua family and got into Hua Jinyao's car. Are you unhappy? Hua Jinyao had noticed that Su Qingsang's expression was not good. Do you not want Su Peijian to enter the Hua family? Su Peijian was in the limelight today. In the previous game of chess, she lost the first game, drew the second game, and actually beat old Master Hua in the third game. In recent years, there were not many people who could beat old Master Hua. Su Peijian actually won, which undoubtedly greatly improved her impression in front of old Master Hua. Qingsang, don't worry. Even if she really gets together with Hua Yifan, it won't affect anything. Compared to Hua Yifan, he was old Master Hua's most beloved eldest grandson. With him around, Hua Yifan couldn't beat him, so naturally, Su Peijian couldn't beat Su Qingsang either. Moreover, it was her first day at home, so old Master Hua had to give her and Hua Yifan some face. I'm not worried about that. Su Qingsang shook her head. Although Grandpa can go to his old friends and granduncle when he has nothing to do, he still likes the younger generation to come back to see him often. I'm happy for Grandpa that Su Peijian can win Grandpa's favor. But today there are some things that can't be argued over in one day. I know her purpose. She just wants to ruin my reputation. She hates my father now. I can't just ignore it and ruin my father's reputation. What makes me uncomfortable is her attitude towards Grandpa and my mother. The better Su Peijian behaved, the more it showed how much effort Li Qianxue had put in to nurture her. There were many things that she could see with her own eyes. She used to envy Su Peijian for being raised by Li Qianxue. If Su Peijian didn't have Li Qianxue and Su Qinghue's wholehearted training, she wouldn't have become what she was now, and she wouldn't have been able to win old Master Hua's favor so easily. But all of that came from the Li family. However, she could completely cast aside the Li family after finding out about her family background. My mother raised her for more than 20 years. Even if my mother was angry at Su Qinghui, she still cared about her reputation. She didn't make her background public. My mother always cared about her mother-daughter relationship with Su Peijian. But Su Peijian obviously didn't. That was also why she didn't argue with Su Peijian today. Speaking of which, both Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui still had feelings for Su Peijian. If she went too far, it would only hurt the elders' hearts in the end. More importantly, she didn't want to hurt Xiang Caiping's heart. You're too kind. Hua Jinyao didn't agree with Su Qingsang's idea. This was her decision and he couldn't oppose it. I don't believe you don't know that she deliberately picked Hua Yifan to target you. I know. How could Su Qingsang not know? I won't do anything before she takes the initiative. Hua Jinyao didn't agree. He had wanted to see what Su Peijian was doing before, but he thought that she was still in Lin City, so he didn't investigate. Now that she was in Rong City, and it was obvious that she was targeting Su Qingsang, there was no reason for him not to make a move. I only know that the first to strike has the upper hand. Mom won't agree. Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao. My parents still have feelings for Su Peijian. What's more, there's Aunt Xiang. Hua Jinyao didn't need to say the rest. He looked at Su Qingsang and reached out to gently hug her. Don't worry, I won't let her hurt you. Don't worry, I won't let her hurt me. I won't give her the chance. Hua Jinyao nodded, but he had made up his mind. He would find a chance to tell Yang Wenchang to have someone keep an eye on Su Peijian. He always felt that Su Peijian had a trick up her sleeve. Especially now that she was in cahoots with Hui Yifan, she was most likely up to no good. He wasn't worried that old Master Hua would favor them, nor was he worried that Su Peijian and Hui Yifan would really marry and enter the Hua family. He was worried that Su Peijian had ulterior motives. Getting close to Hui Yifan and entering the Hua family would undoubtedly give her more opportunities to get close to Su Qingsang. There would be more things she could do in the future. And Hui Jinyao didn't want to see that situation. After Hui Yifan left the Hua family, he didn't listen to Su Peijian and send her home. Instead, he parked the car in front of his apartment. Su Peijian sat in the car and didn't plan to get out. What is Hu Xiao trying to do? Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and looked at her. He didn't speak, nor did he get out of the car. Su Peijian had just played a few games of chess with old Master Hua, and Su Qingsang left before them. She chatted with Hui Yifan for a while. After she made old Master Hua happy, she left the Hua family. Hui Yifan's apartment was in the opposite direction of Xiang Caiping's villa. Sitting in the car, she saw Hui Yifan's expression and couldn't help but laugh. She didn't have the gentle concern she had when she was facing old Master Hua. Instead, she looked as innocent as a white rabbit. She moved slightly closer to Hui Yifan, tilted her face, and flipped her slightly curled long hair to the side. President Hua, are you not satisfied with my performance today? How could that be? Hui Yifan took the opportunity to put his arm around Su Peijian's waist and stared at her face. I'm satisfied. I'm very satisfied. Why can't I see that? Hui Yifan stared at Su Peijian's face and bit down on her lip, neither too lightly nor too heavily. You used me today. Did you have a good time? I don't quite understand what Hu Xiao is saying. How is it using me? The lights in the car were dim. Su Peijian bit her lips. Her scarlet lips looked especially charming in this kind of night. You didn't tell me before that you are Su Qingsang's sister. Well, you didn't ask me. Su Peijian raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Besides, aren't you using me too? She was referring to the time when he used her to please old Master Hua. If they were really talking about using each other, they were about the same. Neither of them could blame the other. Woman, you've pissed me off. It was true that he wanted to take her home to meet old Master Hua, but that was because he didn't know her identity, and he didn't know that she had deliberately approached him. Chapter 560. He didn't know that she was Su Qingsang's sister, that she was the daughter of the Su family, and that she had been kicked out of the Su family. Of course, he didn't care about that identity, but the Su family had kicked Su Peijian out to please Su Qingsang. He felt a little uncomfortable when he compared himself to her. Mr. Hua, you're wrongly accusing me. I remember I asked you before, didn't I? I asked you if you dared to meet my parents with me. You said you dared. Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Peijian's face. Did you approach me on purpose for Su Qingsang? Didn't you also use me on purpose for Hui Jinyao? Su Peijian's counterattack made Hui Yifan feel a little suffocated. Woman, I don't like to be used. If you're used, it means that you're still valuable. What's more, Su Peijian put her hand on Hui Yifan's chest. We're not just using you. We're using each other. Isn't that right? Hui Yifan didn't speak. He felt a little uncomfortable. Su Peijian changed the topic at that moment. Your aunt doesn't seem to like my sister, does she? Hui Yifan looked at her with a cunning look in his eyes. What do you want to do? Mr. Hua, you should ask what we want to do. Su Peijian approached Hui Yifan with a smile. Her red lips opened and closed, but the words she said were full of calculation. You don't like Hui Jinyao and I don't like Su Qingsang. Do you know Hui Jinyao's weakness? It's Su Qingsang. If Su Qingsang had anything, would Hui Jinyao still have the mood to fight with you? Would he still have the mood to sit as the president of Tianyu Group? She didn't need to say the rest. Hui Yifan was a smart man, so he naturally understood what she meant. Looking at the smugness in her eyes, he suddenly tightened his hand on her waist. Has anyone ever told you that you're a bad woman? No, you're the first. Su Peijian smiled and put her arms around his neck. Has anyone ever told you that you're a bad man? I don't think so. As Su Peijian said this, she kissed him on the lips. So, the two of us, bad men and bad women, just happened to be a match made in heaven. Just as she was about to step back, Hui Yifan grabbed her waist. He trapped her in his arms again. A pair made in heaven? Isn't it? Yes. Hui Yifan didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he kissed Su Peijian's lips savagely. Only when Su Peijian was out of breath did he pull back slightly, but he didn't let go. Since we are a match made in heaven, let us bring disaster to the world together. Sure. Su Peijian's lips curled into a smile. I like this word. Is that so? Then let's make a little. Something you like better. Hui Yifan got out of the car as he spoke. He walked to the other side of the car door and carried Su Peijian out. Su Peijian didn't flinch this time. She let him carry her upstairs. That night, Su Peijian didn't go home. Is the work in the hospital too tiring recently? Why do I see that you don't look so good? Li Qianxue, who was video chatting with Su Qingsang, noticed the dark circles under Su Qingsang's eyes. Oh, maybe I didn't sleep well last night. Su Peijian suddenly showed up yesterday. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid of her. She was just wondering if she should tell Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui about it. Like Hu Jinyao, she didn't think that Su Peijian was harmless. She suddenly showed up with Hui Yifan. She must have a purpose. The most likely reason was that she was here for her. However, she didn't know what Su Peijian wanted to do. Yesterday? Li Qianxue counted the days. She knew that Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao went to the Hu mansion every weekend. Did Hu Jinyao's mother make things difficult for you again? No. What are you talking about, Mom? Lu Tongjia had been very quiet yesterday. She was a little confused by Lu Tongjia's quiet behavior. Lu Tongjia was so quiet that it wasn't like her at all. Her mother isn't that kind of unreasonable person. At most she would just ignore me. It's better if she doesn't talk to you. You don't talk to her either. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see her daughter being bullied, especially when she thought of Lu Tongjia's face. She had just recognized her daughter and she hadn't loved her enough yet. Why were Lu Tongjia's eyes and nose not her nose? Mom, why are you like a child? Li Qianxue was a little embarrassed. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. She had been a little grumpy recently. After all, it was that bastard Su Qinghui's fault. Even if they were divorced, so be it. Everything was fine, but now he was acting like he regretted it in front of her and pretending that he still had feelings for her. He didn't find it annoying, but she found it annoying. The key was that she didn't know where he learned to be so thick-skinned. He always used Su Yusin's name to come to her. She hated that her daughter wasn't by her side, but she still had to worry about her son. Su Qinghui thought that he could enter the house, but he didn't know that because of his actions, Li Qianxue now hated him more and more. Li Qianxue naturally wouldn't say these things in front of Su Qingsang. I'm just anxious and worried for you. You see, you're alone over there and I can't help you much. If anything happens, you still have to rely on yourself. I'm feeling wronged for you. Mom? I'm not wronged. Su Qingsang really didn't feel wronged. Lu Tongjia's expression was ugly. Speaking of it, it was not much different from how Li Qianxue treated her back then. And the relatives of the Li family. Sometimes she felt lucky that she had been through the lowest point of her life. Lu Tongjia's words didn't affect her at all. To be honest, she was more worried about Hu Jinyao. In fact, as long as Hu Jinyao is good to me, the two of us can live our own lives. Even if there was a lot of trouble in the Hu family, as long as Hu Jinyao was with her, she would feel that nothing mattered. Li Qianxue naturally knew this, but she said, Qingsang, it's really not that I'm trying to persuade you. You're not old, but you're not young either. I don't mean anything else, and I'm not urging you to have children. I just think that if you have children, maybe the Hu family will change their attitude for the sake of their grandson. What do you think? To be honest, Li Qianxue actually didn't want Su Qingsang to have children under such circumstances. What would happen then? Would Su Qingsang rely on having children to stabilize her position? Would she rely on having children to improve the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? As soon as Li Qianxue thought of this, she felt wronged for Su Qingsang. However, she also knew that this was the simplest and most direct way. Give birth to the fourth generation of the Hu family, whether it was Hu Mingguang or Lu Tongjia. For the sake of the children, they would definitely not make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She thought of Hu Jinyao's attitude on this matter several times. Mom, I'm still young. There's no rush. Li Qianxue wanted to persuade her again, but in the end she still felt sorry for her daughter and stopped talking about children. After ending the call, Su Qingsang put her phone aside and looked at the half-empty bed. She knew that what Li Qianxue said made sense. Although it wasn't the best solution, it was indeed the easiest step to solve the bad relationship between Hu Jinyao and Lu Tongjia. However, this matter had never been decided by her alone. In fact, since last time, she had vaguely felt that Hu Jinyao probably didn't want to have children. She could tell from the fact that even when he was in a trance, he didn't forget to take contraceptives. Hu Jinyao didn't want children. At first, she had always thought that he was so careful about contraceptives because she didn't want to have children. However, slowly as time passed, especially when she explicitly hinted several times. However, when Hu Jinyao pretended that he didn't understand, she realized. She didn't understand why before, but after seeing what Lu Tongjia had done, she was afraid that the knot in Hua Jinyao's heart was still because of Lu Tongjia. If she could solve the knot between Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao, didn't that mean that this matter was half resolved? Su Qingsang thought of it and did it. Hua Jinyao had something to do today. She could use this time to ask old Master Hua again. An hour later, Su Qingsang stood in the living room of the Hua family's old house. Uncle Cheng was a little surprised to see her. Yesterday Hua Jinyao didn't stay in the old house. He only said that he had an international meeting this morning and left with Su Qingsang. He didn't expect that Su Qingsang would come again today. Young mistress, you're back? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. I'm looking for Grandpa. Where is he? Grandpa is playing with the parrot in the back. Thinking of this, Uncle Cheng smiled. Grandpa likes that parrot very much. He plays with it when he has nothing to do. The parrot is quarreling in front of others, but it has a lot to say to Grandpa. Then I'll go to the backyard to find Grandpa. After saying that, Su Qingsang walked to the back. Uncle Cheng wanted to say that there were guests in the backyard, but Su Qingsang walked so fast that he didn't have time to say it. Before Su Qingsang reached the yard, she heard old Master Hua's voice. She thought that he was chatting with the parrot, so she didn't think much and walked straight up. Grandpa Yuan, when he saw the person standing next to old Master Hua, he swallowed his words and nodded at that person. Uncle. Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang. The temperature in Rong City had risen a lot. It was the end of spring. Even though it wasn't warm, the temperature had begun to rise. Su Qingsang was wearing a red long-sleeve dress today. Su Qingsang's facial features were actually pretty and elegant. However, the red dress suited her very well. It made her look more lively than usual. Especially when she tied her long hair into a ponytail, she looked much more youthful. Zhang Yichen's eyes darkened. Instead of greeting Su Qingsang, he nodded coldly. Chapter 561. Grandpa. Zhang Yichen was there, so Su Qingsang couldn't ask what she wanted to ask. Can't I come to see you if I'm free? Yes, of course. Old Master Hua smiled and said, if you don't come to accompany me, I can only talk to the parrot. You came just in time. I have a companion now. Grandpa, don't you have uncle to accompany you? Su Qingsang wasn't surprised to see Zhang Yichen in the Hua mansion. Speaking of which, he really cared about the old master. Whenever he came to Rong City, he would come to accompany the old master. Zhang Yichen had helped him last time. She had told Hua Jinyao that she would treat Zhang Yichen to dinner, but they hadn't been able to see him since he returned to the army. Yes, Yichen is a good boy. Old Master Hua liked Zhang Yichen very much. He also had the heart to visit her whenever he came to Lin City. Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond. He was older than her, so she just smiled at him. Uncle Cheng suddenly appeared at the door and called out. Old Master, it's Second Master Hua. The second master that Uncle Cheng was talking about was naturally Hua Yangyuan. Hearing that, Old Master Hua glanced at Su Qingsang and said, You talk to your uncle for a while. I need to take a call. He left in such a hurry that he forgot that Zhang Yichen was about the same age as Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't understand Old Master Hua's sudden proposal. He glanced at Zhang Yichen. The parrot, which was not noisy a moment ago, was now silent. Zhang Yichen stood there and looked at her. Su Qingsang felt a little embarrassed when she met his eyes. Thank you for last time. She was referring to the incident at the hospital. If Zhang Yichen hadn't shown up in time, she and Hua Jinyao wouldn't have been able to solve the problem. She would have suffered some losses as well. You're welcome. Zhang Yichen turned his face away on purpose. It's nothing. It's a small matter to you, but it's not a small matter to me. Su Qingsang smiled. The gratitude in her eyes was very sincere. Last time, I told Jinyao that I would pick a time to treat you to dinner. You're welcome. It really isn't a big deal. Of course. Su Qingsang wasn't an ungrateful person. How long are you going to stay in Rong City? Otherwise, Jinyao and I will be the host. Zhang Yichen finally turned around to look at her. Her eyes were clear and filled with pure gratitude. Also, the way she looked at him was as if she was looking at an elder. He knew this very well, but he could not hide the bitterness in the depths of his heart. I don't like to eat out. What Zhang Yichen said made Su Qingsang look at him with confusion. Last time at your house, Zhang Yichen added, your aunt was a good cook. Then let's do it at home. Ms. Yu's cooking was really good, so Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. She was thinking of a time that would be convenient for everyone. Uncle, let's see if you're free these few days. You can also tell me what you like to eat. I'll go buy some groceries. Su Qingsang wanted to ask Ms. Yu to buy the groceries. However, she was going to thank him anyway, so it would be more sincere if she said that she was going to buy groceries. I'll have to trouble you then. How is it troublesome? I'm the one who's troubling you. Zhang Yichen looked at her. She seemed to want to cut all ties with him as if they had never known each other. It made him feel a little uncomfortable. He turned around, not looking at her but at the parrot. Surprisingly, the parrot didn't speak. Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. She took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the parrot. "I Jade." The parrot arrogantly turned its head, completely ignoring Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. The last time she came here, the parrot had argued with her. Zhang Yichen was still here, but the parrot didn't give her any face. Zhang Yichen glanced at her and took a step to her side. He didn't say anything. He just stared at the parrot. At first, the parrot looked at Zhang Yichen, but the moment it saw Zhang Yichen raise his hand, the parrot screamed. "I'm killing a bird. Help. Bird killing. Help." Su Qingsang was waiting for the parrot to say something, but she didn't expect it to say something like that. She was completely unprepared, so she laughed. That parrot was so funny, wasn't it? Who was going to kill her? She smiled brightly and her eyes were curved. Zhang Yichen was standing next to her. From this angle, he only felt that her smile was so bright and beautiful, so attractive. Zhang Yichen lowered his eyes and restrained all his emotions. Su Qingsang also realized at that moment that she seemed to have forgotten herself. She turned around and looked at Zhang Yichen awkwardly. "Uncle, I'm sorry." Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. He didn't know what to say at that moment. Before, when he didn't know Su Qingsang's identity, he didn't feel uncomfortable in front of her. However, ever since he found out her identity, he had a feeling that if he spoke to her more, he would bring trouble to her. His attitude was naturally different from when they first met. However, Su Qingsang now saw him as an elder, so she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. If Zhang Yichen behaved like he did when they first met, she would be afraid. She realized that it wasn't appropriate for her to stand with Zhang Yichen like this. She also remembered that there were guests here today, so she probably wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Su Qingsang had to give up today. She would ask Old Master Hua when she had the chance. "Uncle, I have something to do, so I have to go. Help yourself." After saying goodbye to Zhang Yichen, Su Qingsang was about to leave. Zhang Yichen didn't stop her, but after Su Qingsang took 2 steps, he suddenly said, "I will still be in Rong City tomorrow and the day after." Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment and turned around to look at him. For a moment she didn't understand what Zhang Yichen meant. When she met Zhang Yichen's eyes, she seemed to suddenly understand. Then tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday, so Jinyao's company shouldn't be that busy. Okay. Zhang Yichen nodded. "I will come over tomorrow night. Then it's a deal." After saying that, Su Qingsang nodded slightly and was about to leave. At that moment, the parrot behind her spoke again. "Come over tomorrow. Come over tomorrow. Come over tomorrow." It was so loud that Su Qingsang almost got scared. She turned around and stared at the parrot. "Come over tomorrow. I will come over tomorrow." The parrot was still calling. Su Qingsang felt embarrassed. She couldn't help but take a step forward. "Stop calling. Shut up." However, the parrot wasn't afraid of her at all. It called a few more times. Zhang Yichen took a step forward again and glared at the parrot. His glare was much more intimidating. The parrot immediately stopped talking. It even took a few steps back as if it was afraid of Zhang Yichen. Su Qingsang couldn't help but laugh when she saw the look in Zhang Yichen's eyes. "Thank you, uncle." She bowed and was about to leave. The moment she turned around, her ponytail got stuck in the button of Zhang Yichen's shirt. Su Qingsang's scalp tightened. She gasped. The pain stopped her in her tracks. Just now, she felt that the situation was a little awkward, so she turned around a little too quickly. She didn't expect something like this to happen. She took a step forward. Her scalp tightened again. "Don't move." The man's deep voice rang out. She didn't move. "Your hair got stuck in my button." Zhang Yichen took a step forward and explained in a low voice. Su Qingsang was about to say something. However, Zhang Yichen stopped her before she could. "Don't move. I'll untie it for you." Her hair was stuck in his button. If she turned around, the two of them would be too intimate. Su Qingsang realized it and didn't insist. It was a little awkward to stand there. "Thank you, uncle." Su Qingsang thanked him in a low voice. Feeling that Zhang Yichen was standing closer, he raised his hand and gently pushed her hair away. Su Qingsang didn't dare to move at all. The situation was a little awkward. She was a little embarrassed. She felt that every time she met Zhang Yichen she would easily get into trouble. She waited for about 30 seconds. There was no sound behind her. She couldn't help but ask, "Are you done?" In Zhang Yichen's hand was the strand of hair that Su Qingsang had gotten stuck in his button. The faint fragrance smelled a little familiar. He remembered the smell. He had smelled it after Su Qingsang took a bath. "Uncle, are you done?" Su Qingsang waited for a long time. She couldn't help but ask again. "Yes." Zhang Yichen let go of her hair and took a step back. His well-trained body straightened up. "Thank you, uncle." Su Qingsang took a step back and looked down at Zhang Yichen. "I'm leaving. See you tomorrow, uncle." "See you tomorrow." Zhang Yichen looked into her eyes. "I'll be there on time." "Then I'm leaving." Su Qingsang was really embarrassed. She had been so impolite in front of an elder several times. It was really embarrassing. She left, and the faint fragrance in the air once again disappeared without a trace. Zhang Yichen closed his eyes and turned his head sideways. He tried hard to smell the remaining fragrance in the air, but he quickly came to his senses. He raised his head and looked in a certain direction. It was the place where he felt someone was watching him last time. He narrowed his eyes and walked quickly to the place where he felt someone was standing. He looked around but didn't see anyone. He looked in the direction of the main house again. He knew that the elders of the Hua family were not at home today except for old Master Hua. Not everyone was free on the weekends. On the contrary, because of their identities, Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were not at home on weekends. So who was standing here just now? Yichen. Old Master Hua had answered the phone and came out again. It was a nice day. He usually liked to play with the parrot here. "Uncle." Zhang Yichen walked up. Old Master Hua glanced at him and said, "Why are you over there?" "It's not time yet. There's nothing good to see in the garden right now. You'll have to come back later to see something good." "No, I'm just looking around." Chapter 562. Old Master Hua didn't notice that something was wrong with Zhang Yichen. He just pointed at Lian Dian with his mouth. "If you want to see the flowers, go to the greenhouse over there." That greenhouse was built by the old woman. She passed away later. Lu Tongjia loved flowers and plants, so she built a lot of them. There were more varieties in the greenhouse than when the old woman was there, and they were more delicate. Many of them were expensive. Speaking of which, Lu Tongjia didn't have any faults other than being too stubborn when it came to Hua Jinyao. "Well, since you're here, let's have dinner together." I was going to ask Qingsang to stay, but she said she had something to do and left. Old Master Hua couldn't help but look at Zhang Yichen. "Yichen, you won't dislike an old man like me, right?" "Of course not." Zhang Yichen looked down with a gentle expression. He remembered that Su Qingsang seemed to have something to say to Old Master Hua when she came in. She wasn't in trouble again, was she? For some reason he felt a little sorry for her. She seemed to be having a hard time after marrying Hua Jinyao. Zhang Yichen tried hard to suppress his concern for Su Qingsang, but he couldn't help it at the last moment. It wasn't a good thing, not for her, not for him. Zhang Yichen pressed his lips into a straight line. When he met Old Master Hua's eyes again, he had already suppressed his emotions. In the CEO's office of Tianyu Group. It was Sunday, so there was no one in the building. In the CEO's office on the top floor, Hua Jinyao and Yang Wenchang still had work to do. Hua Jinyao looked at the things he had arranged. Everything was going according to plan. He was quite satisfied with Yang Wenchang's workability. However, "You mean Su Peijian came to Rong City right after we did?" After leaving the Hua family the day before yesterday, he asked Yang Wenchang to investigate Su Peijian's movements in the past few months. Su Peijian's activities were easy to find. In fact, she didn't try to hide anything. Hua Jinyao knew that she had taken over Xiang Caiping's supermarket chain and was now the general manager. However, she had hooked up with Hua Yifan in the past month or so. The night they left the Hua mansion, Su Peijian followed Hua Yifan to his house. Yes. It was easy to find out when Su Peijian came to Rong City. Not long after Su Peijian and Xiang Caiping met, she came to Rong City. After that, she kept in contact with all the major suppliers. One of the suppliers, whose surname was He, had worked with Tianyu Group before. Therefore, through him, Su Peijian met an employee of the Tianyu Group. Then, through that employee, she finally managed to get in touch with Hua Yifan. Her methods are not bad. Hua Jinyao sneered, but his voice was not full of praise. Who would believe that Su Peijian didn't have an ulterior motive? President Hua, next, keep an eye on her and see who else she interacts with other than Hua Yifan. Yes. Yang Wenchang nodded and thought of another person. What about Vice President Hua Yifan? Don't worry about him. Hu Jingyao sneered. He's in cahoots with Su Peijian. If you keep an eye on Su Peijian, you'll be keeping an eye on Hu Yifan. After giving his orders, Hu Jingyao decided to go home. It was a good weekend. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to talk about the company at home and cause Su Qingsang to misunderstand, he would rather stay at home. After leaving the company, Hu Jingyao drove home. When he passed by a flower shop, he suddenly remembered something. Because Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue had recognized each other, they had spent the New Year in Lin City. And the New Year was very close to Valentine's Day. He hadn't sent Su Qingsang flowers yet. He stopped the car and bought Su Qingsang a large bouquet of roses. When Hu Jingyao entered the house with the roses, he didn't expect to see someone in the living room who shouldn't have been there. Uncle? Why was he here? Hu Jingyao's eyes flashed with surprise. Su Qingsang, who was in the kitchen, heard the sound and walked out. The first thing she saw was the large bouquet of roses in Hu Jingyao's hands. You're back? Su Qingsang didn't get an answer yesterday, but she wasn't very disappointed. These were all things that she had expected. However, she still felt a little regretful. She wanted to resolve the conflict between Hu Jingyao and Lu Tongjia as soon as possible. If it could be resolved, it would be a good thing for them to get back together. But it didn't seem that easy at all. Su Qingsang had something on her mind, so she forgot about Zhang Yichen's visit yesterday. It wasn't until this morning that Zhang Yichen arrived, not long after Mizu bought the groceries. She remembered that Zhang Yichen said he would come over for dinner yesterday. This was embarrassing. Not only did she forget to tell Hu Jingyao that Zhang Yichen was coming, but she also forgot that he was coming. Su Qingsang was very embarrassed. To cover up her embarrassment, she asked Mizu to buy more groceries, while she went into the kitchen first. She put the rice in the pot and started to process the ingredients that Mizu had bought. She had just started when Hu Jingyao came back. Yes, here, this is for you. Hu Jingyao didn't care that his uncle was still standing next to him. He directly put the large bouquet of roses in front of Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was a little surprised. What day is it? Why did you suddenly think of giving me flowers? Can't I give my wife flowers on any day? Hu Jingyao held Su Qingsang's hand. My wife is so good. It's only right that I send you flowers every day. He was so talkative. Seeing him like this, Su Qingsang joked, maybe a flower shop is about to close and you just happened to pass by. You don't believe me? Hu Jingyao narrowed his eyes and held her in his arms. Do you want me to buy a flower shop to give it to you? And let them send a bouquet of flowers every day from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? What do you think? Do you want to buy a clothing store so that I can wear new clothes every day? Next, there was a shop that sold bags and jewelry. Don't you think you should buy a street first? That's a good idea. Hu Jingyao agreed seriously. Why don't I accompany you to look around Rong City tomorrow? Let me know if you like any street. I'll buy it for you. What do you think? Crazy. That's right. I'm crazy for you. Hu Jingyao liked to tease her. He felt a sense of accomplishment when he saw her blushing and speechless. Su Qingsang glanced at him. When she was about to speak, she suddenly saw Zhang Yichen standing beside them. Seeing that Zhang Yichen had been staring at them, she suddenly felt embarrassed. Jingyao. Su Qingsang took half a step back and signaled to Hu Jingyao with her eyes. Stop it. It's okay. Uncle is one of us. Hu Jingyao really regarded Zhang Yichen as one of his own. He had participated in training with the army for a period of time. No matter how embarrassed he was, Zhang Yichen had seen him, so this idea was nothing to him. Su Qingsang didn't think that way. She asked Hu Jingyao to let go of her. I still have dishes to prepare in the kitchen. You guys talk first. She took half a step back from his arms and glanced at Zhang Yichen. Seeing that he was still staring at them, she explained to Hu Jingyao. We met Uncle yesterday. We haven't thanked him for what happened last time, so we invited him to dinner. Of course. After saying that, Hu Jingyao felt that something was wrong. Where did you meet Uncle? Rong City was so big. How could she meet him so easily? Last time she met him and this time? Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't plan to tell Hu Jingyao about her visit to the Hu mansion. I'll go put the flowers in first. After saying that, Su Qingsang smiled at Hu Jingyao. Su Qingsang smiled at Hu Jingyao and went to find a vase to put the flowers in. Hu Jingyao walked to the sofa and sat down. He found a cup of tea in front of Zhang Yichen. It didn't look like it was freshly brewed. It seemed to have been there for a while. Uncle, you've been here for a long time? Yes. I'm off today. Hu Jingyao nodded. Where did you meet Su Qingsang yesterday? The Hu mansion. Zhang Yichen didn't understand why he couldn't tell him. I went to see Uncle and happened to see him. Why did Su Qingsang go to the Hua mansion? They had just been there the day before. Hua Jinyao glanced in the direction where Su Qingsang disappeared. His eyes were deep and he didn't look as relaxed as before. What are you doing? Why did you go out on the weekend? Zhang Yichen suddenly changed the topic. He didn't know if it was intentional or not. Chapter 563. It was noon in Rong City. The weather wasn't cold. She was shopping with two other women who looked like rich ladies. Auntie. The moment Su Peijin saw Lu Tongjia, she quickly went up to her and greeted her. Hello. You're here shopping too? She said it intimately as if they were very familiar with each other. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Peijin with an indifferent expression. She just responded and didn't want to talk to Su Peijin anymore. Su Peijin wasn't someone who would give up easily. Auntie, since we met, it must be fate. I often heard from Yifan that you and uncle took good care of him, and he was very grateful to you, Su Peijin. Lu Tongjia suddenly interrupted her. You don't have to use the way you coaxed the old man on me. Su Peijin didn't expect that she would be rejected before she even made a move. However, she wasn't discouraged at all. Auntie, you really misunderstood me. I'm telling the truth. As she spoke, Su Peijin glanced at the two women next to Lu Tongjia. Auntie, if you don't believe me, you can ask other people to see if I'm telling the truth. Who doesn't know that you're kind and generous? The two women next to her happened to be Mrs. Su Ruoli's mother, and Li Xiangyuan. They couldn't refute Su Peijin's words at that time. Lu Tongjia was no longer in the mood to shop after being interrupted by Su Peijin. She turned around and glanced at Mrs. Su and Li Xiangyuan. The two of them said that they had something to do, so they took their leave. Lu Tongjia didn't pay attention to Su Peijin after they parted ways. She took out her phone and called the driver to pick her up. Su Peijin blocked Lu Tongjia's way. Auntie, since we met, why don't we talk for a while? I have nothing to talk to you about. But I think we should have a lot to talk about. They were in front of a department store, which wasn't a good place to talk. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Peijin deeply and entered a coffee shop next to her. Su Peijin smiled and followed her. They sat down in the corner of the coffee shop. Su Peijin smiled warmly. Auntie, what would you like to drink? I'm not here for a drink. If you have anything to say, just say it. Auntie, I really just want to talk to you. After all, I feel that someone like Auntie definitely doesn't like to be deceived, right? What are you trying to say? I want to say, Su Qingsang, I think you might not know her identity. I know. She is Li Qinshue's daughter. And you? Lu Tongjia looked Su Peijin up and down and said sarcastically, you're the illegitimate daughter who popped out of nowhere. Su Peijin was a little embarrassed that her identity had been exposed. Auntie, why do you say that about me? Even if Su Qingsang isn't an illegitimate daughter, don't you still dislike her? So. Lu Tongjia leaned forward a little. You want to join forces with me to deal with Su Qingsang? Auntie, what are you talking about? If you don't like her, why do you have to be like this? Su Peijin didn't believe that Lu Tongjia would be indifferent to her proposal. Auntie, I heard that you wanted to marry another daughter-in-law. Didn't I help you? Help me? Lu Tongjia sneered. Help me or help yourself? Why don't you see this as helping each other? Helping each other? Lu Tongjia smiled. What? Do you think that you can make me cooperate with you just because you don't like Su Qingsang? Seeing Su Peijin's expression change, she stopped smiling. Su Peijin. I'm not afraid to tell you that I really don't like Su Qingsang, but I dislike you even more. Auntie? Since you are no longer the daughter of the Su family, you have to accept your fate. I can understand that you don't want to accept your fate and want to get back what you used to be. I can understand that, but I don't want to be the one who pushes you forward. But I don't like Su Qingsang, do I? Lu Tongjia looked at her with more and more sarcasm. You think too much. I don't like her. But she and Hua Jinyao are already married. What? Do you think that I would let Su Qingsang leave the Hua family for your selfish reasons? Auntie? That's enough. Lu Tongjia didn't have the patience to stay any longer. She stood up. You're too young to use me. Auntie, I really didn't mean that. It doesn't matter if you did or didn't. I don't like to be used anyway. I'm not interested in cooperating with you. After all, a woman like you who writes her ambition on her face is more annoying to me than Su Qingsang. After saying that, Lu Tongjia left right away. Su Peijin was left sitting there with a terrible look on her face. She didn't expect Lu Tongjia to be like this. Her chest was heaving up and down. Seeing Lu Tongjia's figure disappear, she slowly let out a breath. Good. Was she more annoying than Su Qingsang? She wanted to see who would have the last laugh between Su Qingsang and her. After dinner it was still early. Su Qingsang went to the kitchen to cut some fruits and put them on the coffee table. Zhang Yichen glanced at her and thanked her in a low voice. "You're welcome." Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao and then at Zhang Yichen. She signaled Hu Jinyao to greet Zhang Yichen with her eyes and then went back to her room. She still had an unfinished paper in her hands. She wanted to use this time to finish it. Su Qingsang held the notebook with the paper she had printed beside her hand. She was writing on the bed, but she didn't know how she fell asleep. In the end, she was woken up by Hu Jinyao's kiss. She blinked her eyes and looked at Hu Jinyao's face. "What time is it?" "It's past 4. Uncle left?" "He's still outside." Hu Jinyao kissed her cheek. "Why did you fall asleep? Are you sleepy?" Su Qingsang shook her head. "Is Uncle okay? Why didn't he leave? You don't like him coming?" "Not really." Su Qingsang thought about the few times she had met Zhang Yichen. She felt a little uncomfortable. "I just feel that he seems to have a lot of free time." "He's not free. Every time he comes to Rong City he has something to do." "Yes. Every time he came to Rong City he had something to do. Every time he had something to do, he had time to go to the Huo family. Every time he had something to do, he happened to see her in an embarrassing moment." "Is he still eating at our place tonight?" "No. We're going out for dinner." Hu Jinyao put away the papers and notebooks on the bed. "Li Junxing is back. Everyone said they're going to have a gathering tonight. I'll take you with me." "Okay." Su Qingsang had a good impression of Li Junxing and knew that he was close to Hu Jinyao. Hearing this, she immediately got up and got dressed. However, halfway through she suddenly turned around and looked at Hu Jinyao. "Uncle, you're not coming with us, are you?" "Yes." "He knows Li Junxing and the others." "Of course we're going together." Su Qingsang nodded and didn't ask any more. At that moment, Hu Jinyao got up and put his arms around her waist. "Wife, did you go to the old house to see Grandpa yesterday?" Su Qingsang stopped putting on her clothes. She turned around and looked at Hu Jinyao. "Yes. Grandpa is usually alone at the Huo mansion. Although your parents are at home, they don't seem to be able to spend much time with Grandpa. I'll go see him when I have time." Hu Jinyao gave Su Qingsang a deep look, but didn't expose her lie. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable being stared at by him. She couldn't help but say, "Actually, apart from spending time with Grandpa, I also want to." "It's okay." Hu Jinyao interrupted her. "If you have time, you can spend more time with Grandpa." "Jinyao? Next time I'll go with you." Su Qingsang looked at him. She had a feeling that Hu Jinyao knew that she wanted to go to the old house to ask about old Master Hua. She lowered her head and wanted to say something else, but Hu Jinyao hugged her. "Wife, give me some time." If she gave him some time, he would tell her what she wanted to know. That was what he wanted. She knew it. Su Qingsang put her face close to Hu Jinyao's ear and finally nodded gently. "Okay." They didn't say what it was or when. The two of them already had a tacit understanding with each other. They both knew what the other meant. Su Qingsang let him hug her. Since he said so, she wouldn't ask. He would tell her when he wanted to tell her one day. However, because of his words, she also believed one thing. That was, what happened back then was definitely not what Lu Tongjia understood. Perhaps there was something else, but she didn't know what it was. Now she could only wait. Wait for Hu Jinyao to be willing to tell her. Li Junxing was the mayor of Lin City, so he didn't usually come back. He was an ambitious man. When he had nothing to do, he would fly around. He would investigate here and communicate there. This time he would only stay for 2 days. The dinner place was set at Xiangshan Restaurant. Su Qingsang had been here a few times, so she was very familiar with the place. Not long after she sat down, Wan Xianying came first. He sat in the empty seat next to Su Qingsang. On the other side of Su Qingsang was Hu Jinyao, and on the other side was Zhang Yichen. Seeing Wan Xianying's behavior, Zhang Yichen turned to look at Hu Jinyao. He was talking to Li Junxing about Lin City, so he didn't notice Wan Xianying's behavior. Zhang Yichen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Wan Xianying again. "Sister-in-law, what is Mengwan busy with these days? Why doesn't she come to Rong City to hang out with you? She has her own things to do. How can she hang out with me every day?" Su Qingsang knew what Wan Xianying was thinking. She couldn't help but remind him, "Don't you have her WeChat? You can contact her yourself." "I know, but she doesn't talk to me." Wan Xianying felt a little wronged. "Sister-in-law, look at me. I'm not bad, right? Why does your bestie have such high standards? Don't wrongly accuse her. It's not that she has high standards. She just doesn't like you." "So she doesn't like me? Isn't that high standards? Wan Xianying was a little unconvinced. Seeing him like this, Su Qingsang wanted to laugh. Don't be like this. It's not your problem. It's that you're really not her type. She had been in contact with Shi Mingwan recently, and she had also heard from her that Wan Xianying would contact her from time to time. He would also greet her every morning, noon, and night. In fact, Wan Xianying didn't feel it himself, but Shi Mingwan already felt troubled. It was just because he was Hu Jinyao's childhood friend that she didn't want to offend him too much. So she could only not reply to his messages. She didn't directly blacklist him. She couldn't tell Wan Xianying that. Su Qingsang knew. Zhan Haoze and Wan Xianying were not the same in terms of personality and appearance. More importantly, Shi Mingwan had been stubborn because of Zhan Haoze. She had been thinking about him for more than 10 years. Over the years there had been people who pursued her. But she really wasn't tempted at all. It wasn't something worth announcing. Wan Xianying said it in a very low voice. Su Qingsang said it in an even lower voice. No one else could hear them. They could only see that they were talking happily. Zhang Yichen suddenly stood up. When he met Hu Jinyao's somewhat confused gaze, he twitched the corner of his mouth. I'm going to make a call. He walked out. Hu Jinyao only asked one question and didn't ask anything else after that. Su Qingsang tried to persuade Wan Xianying a few more times, but found that it would have been better if she hadn't done so. He even told Li Junxing that he wanted to go to Lin City with him for a few days this time. Su Qingsang had a headache. Looking at Wan Xianying's serious face, she wondered if she should call Shi Mingwan to remind her. Whatever she wanted came. Shi Mingwan's phone rang. Su Qingsang glanced at it, then at Wan Xianying and got up to answer the call outside. Qingsang, I want to tell you a piece of good news. As soon as she picked up the phone outside the corridor, Su Qingsang heard Shi Mingwan's excited voice. She smiled. What good news? Last time, I took my design to the Imagination Fashion Design Competition in France. I've already passed the preliminary round. Really? You're amazing. Su Qingsang had heard about the competition before. At that time, Shi Mingwan didn't think she could pass it. Su Qingsang had been encouraging her and telling her to give it a try. So you're going to France? Yeah. After the preliminary round, I'm going to France to participate in the next competition. I'm so happy. Su Qingsang was happy for her good friend. She asked Shi Mingwan when she would be going. She was happy to know that it would be in the next week. Wan Xianying was just thinking about going to Lin City to find Shi Mingwan. Shi Mingwan was going to fly to France soon. The competition period was a bit long. They wouldn't be able to meet each other then. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang felt a little bad. Yes. Should she remind Wan Xianying? Forget it. If he went to France again it would be really troublesome. After chatting for a while, Su Qingsang hung up. She looked up and found that Zhang Yichen was standing in front of her. The smile on her face quickly disappeared. Uncle. Call? Su Qingsang was stunned by the sudden question. She nodded subconsciously. Zhang Yichen glanced at her. He was about to leave, but his footsteps fell on the phone in her hand. Who was she talking to? Why was she so happy? Chapter 564. Realizing what he was thinking, Zhang Yichen's face darkened. He walked straight back to the private room. Su Qingsang was confused by the short and sudden question. She didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that Zhang Yichen's attitude was weird. Without thinking too much, she followed him into the private room. Hu Jinyao had just finished talking to Li Junxing about Lin City when he saw Su Qingsang following Zhang Yichen into the room. Zhang Yichen's expression was serious, but he quickly calmed down after he entered the private room. Su Qingsang, who was following him, didn't notice his expression at all. She was still happy for Shi Mingwan, but also a little hesitant to tell Wan Xianying that Shi Mingwan was going to France. Looking at the two of them, Hu Jinyao suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, Li Junxing's voice soon caught his attention. He couldn't pay attention to Su Qingsang and Zhang Yichen anymore. Zhang Yichen didn't stay with them for long. Halfway through the meal he received a call. He had an urgent mission. He hung up, told Hu Jinyao and left. Hu Jinyao didn't mind. Zhang Yichen always came and left in a hurry. He was used to it. As for Su Qingsang, Wan Xianying was still pestering her to put in a good word for Shi Mingwan. She had no choice but to agree to ask for Shi Mingwan's opinion, but she couldn't guarantee the result. Wan Xianying thanked her profusely. Su Qingsang thought that he was such a fun guy. She didn't know why he liked Shi Mingwan so much that he was so persistent. She only hoped that Shi Mingwan would make it clear to him so that he would give up soon. When Zhang Yichen was about to leave, he saw Su Qingsang chatting happily with Wan Xianying. His eyes darkened and he kept walking outside. At that moment, Hua Jinyao happened to see Zhang Yichen's last look. His heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly turned around to look at Su Qingsang. She didn't notice it at all. Su Peijian and Old Master Hua finished the game of chess. She had a faint smile on her face. Grandpa Hua, you're so good. You know my style. I've lost 3 games in a row. You're still young. It's good enough that you're like this. Old Master Hua had a smile on his face. Su Peijian had followed Hua Yifan to visit him today, and the two of them had played a few rounds together. Su Peijian was a sweet talker and good at chess. Old Master Hua really found her pleasing to the eye. Hua Yifan sat at the side with a faint smile on his face. He watched Su Peijian and Old Master Hua talking hand to hand. Su Peijian was halfway through the game when she looked at the stalemate on the chessboard. Grandpa, you're amazing. I need to think about this step. I need to go to the bathroom first. I'll come back and play with you later. All right. I'll wait for you to come back and figure out what to do next. Su Peijian smiled and got up to go to the bathroom. She had already been to the Hua mansion twice. I know where the bathroom is. When he came out and passed the corridor, he happened to see the maid, Xiaoxia, holding a plate of fruits in her hands. It seemed like she had just come out from the kitchen. Xiaoxia knew that Old Master Hua liked Su Peijian very much, so she greeted her. Su Peijian looked at the plate of fruit in her eyes. Is this for Grandpa? Give it to me. I'll take you out. No, this is for Madam. Xia was referring to Lu Tongjia. Su Qingsang looked at the exquisite fruits on the plate and reached out to Xia. Let me help you. That's not a good idea, is it? You are the guest, how can I let you serve it? I'm fine. Last time, Auntie said that she had something to tell me. I'll go and ask what's going on. Since she had said so, Xiaoxia didn't think much of it and handed the fruit platter to Su Peijian. Su Peijian picked up the fruit platter and asked for Lu Tongjia's location. She carried the fruit platter upstairs. When she arrived at Lu Tongjia's room, she realized that the door wasn't locked. She was about to knock on the door when she heard voices coming from inside. These two people really don't have any scruples. Lu Tongjia's voice rang out. She was obviously angry. Su Peijian stopped knocking on the door and stood there motionlessly. Silence. No sound came from inside. Soon, Lu Tongjia's voice was heard again. Are you the only one who saw it or did someone else see it? I'm the only one who saw it. Last time, Madam told me to keep an eye on young mistress. The voice sounded younger. Su Peijian didn't have time to think about who it was. She only paid attention to the content of the voice. Young mistress? Wasn't that Su Qingsang? Su Peijian narrowed her eyes and stood to the side to avoid the crack of the door. She moved closer to the inside so that she could hear more clearly. What a shameless person. Lu Tongjia couldn't say anything more. She snorted and said, You can leave now. Delete the photos on your phone. Don't let anyone else see them. Yes. Also, don't tell Jinyao about this for now. Yes. Su Peijian's conversation ended. She quickly walked toward the stairs. The moment the door opened, she turned around and pretended that she had just come up. Someone came out. Soon she saw the person coming out. It seemed to be the maid of the Hua family. She narrowed her eyes and didn't bring the fruit platter in. Instead, when she passed by the maid, her foot suddenly slipped. The fruit platter in her hand fell and she let out a soft cry. Miss Su, are you okay? Xiaojiang looked at Su Peijian. She naturally knew Su Peijian. She had been here twice. I'm fine. Su Peijian looked at Xiaojiang. She was still holding the phone in her hand. She immediately thought of what Xiaojiang had said. The photos on her phone? What photos? Sorry, I couldn't walk steadily and accidentally dropped the fruit platter. Look, can you help me clean it up? This is for Auntie. I can't give it to her like this. Okay. These things were done by them. Xiaojiang didn't think much and squatted down to pick it up. Su Peijian took her phone. I'll hold it for you. You clean it up. I'll go downstairs and get one. Okay. Xiaojiang wanted to clean up the fruit platter as soon as possible. She didn't think much and focused on picking up the fruits on the ground. Su Peijian took her phone and went downstairs. When she reached the stairs, she turned on Xiaojiang's phone. Fortunately, the other party didn't encrypt it. She flipped through the photo album and found some selfies and landscape photos of Xiaojiang. Other than that, she also found some other photos in an unencrypted folder. Looking at those photos, Su Peijian almost laughed out loud. Su Qingsang. I really didn't expect you to be so bold. No wonder Lu Tongjia scolded you. In the photo, Su Qingsang was cuddling with a man. The man hugged her from behind. In another photo she was standing face to face with the man. Chapter 565. The man in the photo had a good temperament. He wasn't as handsome as Hu Jingyao, but he was strong and stylish. His facial features were well defined. More importantly, there were photos of him and Su Qingsang as well as photos of him alone. He looked in the direction where Su Qingsang had left, his eyes focused and eager. Su Peijian wouldn't believe that the man didn't have feelings for Su Qingsang. Su Peijian looked at the photos and smiled silently. Su Qingsang, you put such a big weakness in my hands. If I don't make good use of it, I'll be sorry for our sisterhood. Su Peijian sent the photos to her own phone through Bluetooth as fast as she could. Then she saved them one by one and quickly went downstairs. He ordered a new fruit platter to be served. Xiaojiang didn't notice that her phone had been touched. She was still grateful to Su Peijian for bringing her the fruit platter. Su Peijian, who had achieved her goal, naturally wouldn't go to Lu Tongjia's room to make trouble. She turned around and left. Old Master Huo was still waiting for her to finish the game. Su Peijian smiled and explained that she had been thinking for a long time. However, in this round she made a stupid move and lost in the end. It didn't matter if she lost. She could win it back elsewhere. Hu Yifan was confused by her unusual excitement. After leaving the Huo mansion, he couldn't help but ask Su Peijian what was so happy about. I found something interesting. So I'm very happy. Su Peijian looked at the road ahead and smiled. She wouldn't show those photos to Hu Yifan right now. She still needed to think about how to make the best use of those photos. She was in a hurry just now, but she didn't miss that the background of the photo was the backyard of the Huo mansion. She could even see the parrot behind the two of them. Anyone who could enter the Huo mansion must be related to the Huo family. If they weren't related to the Huo family, they could be relatives of the Huo family. No matter which one it was enough to make Su Peijian excited. Seamless heaven gown? Hu Yifan confirmed again that Su Peijian's behavior today was unusual. Su Peijian turned to look at him. She tilted her head to the side and her face was full of smiles. Nothing. I just found a way to make Grandpa Huo like me more. Hu Yifan's intuition told him that Su Peijian was lying. No matter what you want to do in the Huo family, remember to tell me in advance. You should know that we are working together now. Of course I won't forget. She wanted to find out who the man was through Hu Yifan. Naturally they couldn't leave him out. However, there was no need to show him the photo of the man standing with Su Qingsang. She needed to think clearly about what to do. Su Peijian smiled like a fox, which made Hu Yifan narrow his eyes. He stopped the car in front of them and wrapped his arms around Su Peijian's waist. Disregarding everything else, he kissed her lips. Su Peijian only slightly furrowed her brows and quickly turned the tables. The moment he retreated, she straddled him. Why, do you want to play something new today? Yes. Do you dare? There's nothing to be afraid of. If you dare, I naturally dare. She lowered her head and pressed her lips against Hu Yifan's in a good mood. Her eyes were full of ambition. That blatant and undisguised attitude made Hu Yifan angry. Regardless of everything else, he began to take off her clothes. Su Qingsang was awakened by someone's kiss. She couldn't stand the itchy feeling on her cheeks. She waved her hand unconsciously, but it was caught again. She couldn't move her hands, so she could only open her eyes. She found that Hu Jinyao's face was directly above her. Morning, honey. Hu Jinyao gave her a peck on the lips as he spoke. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes. What's wrong? The weather is good today. Hu Jinyao kissed her again. Honey, let's go out and play. Don't you have to work today? There were indeed many places in Rong City that she hadn't visited yet. However, Su Qingsang didn't expect that Hu Jinyao would be in the mood to go out with her today. She had surgery yesterday and the day before, so she took turns to rest today. It wasn't the weekend, was it? No need. I have time today to accompany you. He had to stay outside for some time. Otherwise, how could he give those people a chance? Su Qingsang nodded and looked at the time. Where to play? To tell you the truth, I'm playing. It's almost afternoon. I'm going somewhere in the morning. Where to? Tang Mohan's new department store needs someone to cut the ribbon. We're going to stand on the stage for him. Tang Mohan's main business was entertainment and department stores. Now he had opened many chain stores all over the country. He did a good job in the entertainment area. This department store happened to be the 100th chain store under Tang Mohan's company. He specially invited Hu Jinyao to celebrate with him and asked him to cut the ribbon. Su Qingsang knew that they had a good relationship, so she quickly tidied herself up. When she was putting on her clothes, she chose a new Chanel suit. She looked completely different from her usual style when she worked in the hospital. My wife is so beautiful today. Hu Jingyao looked at her with a face full of admiration. Su Qingsang glanced at him and swept her gaze over his body. He was wearing a dark three-piece suit and had a standard inverted triangle figure. His fine hair was combed neatly by him. He looked like a social elite. My husband is also very handsome today. Thank you. Hu Jingyao smiled and put his hand in front of Su Qingsang, signaling for her to hold his hand. Su Qingsang held his hand and glanced at him. The two of them smiled at each other and went out together. Tang Mohan's new department store was very big. It wasn't in the city but in a location closer to the suburbs. Many new residential areas had just been developed here. In addition, there were 2 business districts nearby. This location was undoubtedly quite insightful. There was a lot of traffic and the early publicity was in place. After the ribbon cutting, all kinds of activities began. It could be seen that there were a lot of people at the scene. Su Qingsang had never liked crowded places. After the two of them greeted Tang Mohan, they were about to leave. The department store had a total of 8 floors, and each floor operated different items. Hu Jingyao and Su Qingsang originally wanted to stroll around casually, but seeing so many people, the two of them gave up on this idea. They went to the elevator and planned to take a taxi to the underground parking lot. Unexpectedly, the elevator opened and the person who came out was Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang was stunned when she saw Xiang Kaiping. She didn't expect that the two of them would meet under such circumstances. Xiang Kaiping was also stunned when she saw Su Qingsang. The two of them just stood there without moving. Xiang Kaiping wasn't the only one in the elevator. Someone behind her was about to come out. Seeing that she was standing there without moving, she couldn't help but urge her. Xiang Kaiping had no choice but to quickly get out of the elevator. The people behind her also squeezed out, and Xiang Kaiping was squeezed to Su Qingsang's side. "Auntie." Su Qingsang greeted Xiang Kaiping. Her voice wasn't loud. In fact, she wasn't sure if Xiang Kaiping would still be willing to greet her now. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, then looked at her and Hu Jinyao's hand, then nodded gently as a response. This kind of attitude was already beyond Su Qingsang's expectations. With a smile on her face, she took a step forward. "Auntie, are you shopping here too?" Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything and just nodded again. Su Peijian was getting busier and busier. In the past, she ate one of her 3 meals at home. Now, almost none of her 3 meals were eaten at home. The company was managed well by her, and she received 2 new low-price sources of goods. If she criticized her too much, she would say that she was busy with work. In fact, after she took over, the business was indeed better than before. She could tell from the accounts that this daughter of hers was a capable person. However, the more capable her daughter was, the less time she spent with her. The less time they spent together, the more she couldn't help but think of Su Qingsang. Every time she thought of Su Qingsang, she began to regret and blame herself. How could she do this? Su Peijian was her daughter. In such a dilemma, Xiang Kaiping didn't want to stay at home anymore. During the day, she would come out and walk around when she had nothing to do. In fact, she knew that this department store had opened before. She didn't like crowds, but now she felt that the more people there were, the livelier it was. She didn't expect to meet Su Qingsang here. At this moment, facing her, she looked a little uncomfortable. "Auntie, have you eaten?" It was almost time for dinner, so Su Qingsang asked out of politeness. Xiang Kaiping shook her head. Su Peijian was always not at home. It was boring for her to eat alone, so she just ate casually. Back in Lin City, even if Su Qingsang was not at home, there was still a cook at home who would chat with her every day. Now, Xiang Kaiping shook her head. She hadn't eaten yet and she didn't have the stomach to eat. Su Peijian didn't come back last night. She called and she only said that she had something to do. She was her daughter, but she felt so far away from her. Xiang Kaiping didn't like this feeling, but now she couldn't even criticize Su Peijian. "Then why don't we eat together?" As Su Qingsang spoke, she glanced at Hu Jinyao. There was a hint of inquiry in her eyes, as well as some meaning that only they could understand. "Jinyao and I haven't eaten yet. Why don't we eat together?" Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, then at Hu Jinyao. She tightened her grip on the strap of her bag and finally nodded again. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao didn't take Xiang Kaiping further. On the top floor of the department store were all kinds of restaurants. The 3 of them chose one of the restaurants and entered. Su Qingsang sat down first, and after asking Hu Jinyao and Xiang Kaiping what they wanted to eat, she ordered. The waiter served tea and took away the menu. Only the 3 of them were left at the table. Hua Jinyao had a good impression of Xiang Kaiping, so the expression on his face was gentle. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and found that she didn't look particularly good. There were faint dark shadows under her eyes, and she looked more haggard than before in Lin City. Chapter 566. It was a simple greeting, but it made Xiang Caiping's eyes water and the tip of her nose sour. Was it good? Not good at all. She wanted to acknowledge Su Peijian as her daughter. After that, she realized that her daughter was not who she thought she was. She thought of Su Qingsang more than once, and the more she thought about it, the more she hated Su Qinghui. It was all Su Qinghui's fault. If he hadn't switched the child, how could her child have been spoiled like this? How could she not be close to her mother at all? She didn't say anything, but her expression said it all. Su Qingsang felt a little suffocated. She couldn't help but glance at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao shook his head gently at her. Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. She picked up the teapot in front of her and poured some tea for Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, drink this. I remember you said that you like black tea." Xiang Kaiping felt her nose sour again. She lowered her head to hide her emotions. The time she spent with Su Qingsang was about the same as the time she and Su Peijian met. However, Su Peijian still didn't remember what she liked to eat or drink. Su Qingsang, on the other hand, still remembered her preferences after spending a few months together. The dishes she ordered just now were basically according to her preferences. It was not the time to lose her composure. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang sitting opposite her. "How have you been?" "I'm fine." The conversation between the two of them was so polite and distant. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. "You know, Jinyao has always been good to me." Xiang Kaiping glanced at Su Qingsang, then at Hua Jinyao and finally nodded. "Yes, you have always been good." Did Hua Jinyao need to care about how he treated Su Qingsang? Of course it was good. There was another silence and no more words were said. Su Qingsang wanted to say something to Xiang Kaiping, but she realized that it was not appropriate to do so. The words of concern were stuck in her throat and she couldn't ask. The atmosphere of the meal was a little depressing. Su Qingsang was actually very concerned about Xiang Kaiping. She wanted to ask how she was getting along with Su Peijian, but she knew that she couldn't. Su Qingsang poured a bowl of soup for Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, is your waist better?" Her waist had been rehabilitated in Lin City. Although it had almost recovered at that time, she didn't know if she had gone to see a doctor after coming to Rong City. "All right. Much better." Occasionally it would hurt a little, but she could endure it. Hearing Su Qingsang's words of concern, Xiang Kaiping recalled how Su Qingsang had taken care of her when she was in the hospital. She knew very well that this was Su Qingsang. If it was Su Peijian, would she be able to take care of herself like Su Qingsang? Thinking of Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping knew that she was asking for too much. "That's good." Rong City was colder than Lin City. "You need to take care of that waist of yours. You must be careful not to carry heavy objects and don't overwork yourself." Halfway through her sentence, Su Qingsang realized that she had said too much. She pursed her lips and stopped talking. Xiang Caiping's heart ached again. She had been in Rong City for a few months. His waist was almost healed. But when the weather changed, it was indeed a little uncomfortable. After all, the collision at that time had been too hard. She was old and couldn't be compared to young people. But in the past few months, except for a few questions from Su Peijian when she first came, she hadn't mentioned anything else. In the past, even when Li Qianxue stole her man, she had never been jealous of her. Now she was really jealous of Li Qianxue. How could she have such a good daughter? She heard that her son was also an obedient child. Looking at Su Peijian, looking at the table full of dishes, Xiang Kaiping lost her appetite. After dinner, Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao and took the initiative to speak. "Auntie, how did you get here? Why don't we drive you back?" I'll take the bus back myself." She was old and had nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to trouble Su Qingsang. "It's okay. We don't work today anyway." As Su Qingsang spoke, she took the initiative to walk to Xiang Caiping's side. She didn't hold her hand but kept half an arm's length away. "Auntie, just let us drive you." Hua Jinyao also chimed in, "Yes, Auntie, let's go." Xiang Kaiping couldn't argue with the two of them, so in the end, she got into Hua Jinyao's car. Su Qingsang sat with her in the back seat. The two used to be mother and daughter, but now they looked at each other speechlessly. The car stopped in front of Xiang Caiping's small villa. Hua Jinyao looked at the environment in front of him. It was a nice place. The house should have been bought by Xiang Kaiping before. He didn't know that she had good taste. "Auntie, you live here?" "Yes." Xiang Kaiping nodded. Do you want to come in and sit for a while? Next time. We still have something to do. Su Qingsang actually didn't want to meet Su Peijian and cause unnecessary misunderstandings. What she thought Xiang Kaiping could also think of. She wanted to say that Su Peijian wouldn't be at home during the day, but she didn't say it. She got out of the car first. When she turned to leave, she looked back at Su Qingsang. Your number, did it change? No. Whether it's my phone or WeChat, I haven't changed. She was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would look for her, but she felt awkward. Su Qingsang added, Auntie, if you need anything, call me. Also, I work at the First City Hospital now. You can come and see me when you have time. The First City Hospital? Yes, the one in the Jingdong district. Xiang Kaiping nodded and didn't say anything else. She waved her hand and left. Her footsteps were a little shaky. Su Qingsang looked at her and felt sad again. Before Hua Jinyao's car left the villa, Su Qingsang glanced at him. Auntie doesn't seem to be doing well. Of course Hua Jinyao didn't say it. Su Peijian didn't seem to want to acknowledge Xiang Kaiping at all. Since she came to Rong City, she had been busy with her own things. Even if she had time, she would rather think of ways to deal with Su Qingsang than spend more time with her biological mother. Su Qingsang bit her lip and turned to look at the villa behind her, which was already out of sight. How about I come to visit Auntie next time? You can come if you want, but I don't agree. Why? You came to visit Auntie out of kindness. If Su Peijian didn't know, then forget it. If Su Peijian knew, what do you think she would think? She was already prejudiced and dissatisfied with Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue had already acknowledged Su Qingsang, and now she still wanted to snatch Xiang Kaiping? With Su Peijian's personality, she might do something crazy. Chapter 567. Su Qingsang had also thought about that. I can call Auntie and come when Su Peijian is not around. Hua Jinyao didn't think that fire could be wrapped up in paper, not to mention that Su Peijian was here for Su Qingsang. If you really want to see her, call her and arrange to meet her outside. Su Qingsang stopped talking. She knew Hua Jinyao's concerns. However, he said, I'm just looking at Auntie. She doesn't seem to be doing well. Hua Jinyao was silent. No matter how bad their lives were, there was a limit to what they could do. Not to mention the fact that they couldn't help Su Peijian and Xiang Caiping's mother-daughter relationship. At this time, if he really wanted to do something for Xiang Kaiping might not accept it. After all, after this interaction they could roughly guess that Xiang Kaiping was a very proud person. The fact that she didn't say a word for a long time was enough to explain the problem. She didn't want anyone to know that she didn't have a good relationship with Su Peijian. Actually, Auntie is really a very good person. Why can't Su Peijian accept her? Hua Jinyao couldn't answer that question. No matter how good Xiang Kaiping was, Su Peijian couldn't accept another person as her mother because of Li Qianxue's 20 years of influence. She is different from you. Su Qingsang used to think that she didn't have a biological mother, so she naturally yearned for and was attached to her mother. However, Su Peijian already had a mother. She had been with her for more than 20 years and she cared for her very much. Now that he had to acknowledge a woman who had appeared out of nowhere, it would be a wonder if she would accept it. Su Qingsang could also think of what Hua Jinyao could think of. Lowering her head, she felt a little disappointed. She was still thinking about Xiang Kaiping even after she got out of the car. Hua Jinyao reached out to hold her hand, pulled her into his arms and gently patted her back. All right. Don't think about it. There are some things that you can't change. I know, I just feel a little sad. If you're really worried, pick a time when Su Peijian isn't at home to visit her and spend some time with her. All right. Su Qingsang thought so too. It would be impossible for Xiang Kaiping to come to him on her own. It would be more appropriate for her to look for Xiang Kaiping. Let's go. We're here to have fun today. Have fun. Su Qingsang nodded. Since they were out to have fun, it was time to relax and have fun. Hua Jinyao took her to a newly planned wetland park in Rong City. Every year, tens of thousands of migratory birds would rest here. The local area built a protected area. In winter, the migratory birds all flew to the south for the winter. Now that the season was getting warmer, many birds were flying back. It was not a problem for the wanderers to see it, but they were isolated outside the protective net. The outer edge of the net was the wetland park that they were going to visit today. The scenery was quite good. Occasionally, migratory birds from the reserve next door could be seen flying over. They were not afraid of people and would even stop. However, if someone approached it, it would immediately fly away. It was the first time that Su Qingsang had seen these birds up close. His gaze was filled with curiosity. Is that a red-crowned crane? Yes. Hua Jinyao followed her gaze. Look, there's more over there. So beautiful. Su Qingsang's face was full of admiration. If she wasn't afraid of attracting those red-crowned cranes, she would have gone forward to take a closer look. Around the path of the wetland park, there was a small pavilion in front for people to rest. The pavilion was also a viewing pavilion. One could see the reserve in the distance and most of the lake view of the wetland park. It wasn't a weekend, so there weren't many people. When Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao walked forward, they saw that there were already people inside. It was a mother and daughter. The mother looked very young. She was holding her daughter's hand and patiently pointing out some birds outside to her daughter. While showing her daughter, she didn't forget to introduce them. What kind of bird was this? What habits did it have? What kind of bird was that? What did it look like? When Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao entered the small pavilion, the mother was answering her daughter's questions. It could be seen that she had done a lot of homework before coming here. She could answer all the questions asked by her daughter. Su Qingsang stood there and didn't disturb the mother. Instead, she turned her head to look at Hua Jinyao. She wanted to tell him that they should continue walking and give this place to the mother and daughter. However, she didn't expect to find that Hua Jinyao's gaze had been on the mother. His eyes weren't looking at that person. It was as if he was looking at someone through the mother. Su Qingsang suddenly thought of that night when Hua Jinyao called her mother. She lowered her head, and her eyes were inexplicably sore. Jinyao, look. This is a giraffe. Do you know that? Giraffes live in. Mom, giraffes have such long necks. Don't they get tired? Also, what do they do when they sleep? Jinyao, you're so cute. You can even think of such a question. Not bad. So smart. Let me tell you, giraffes are very tired, but they rarely lie down to sleep. Because it's too dangerous. Lu Tongjia's voice overlapped with the mother in front of her. Hua Jinyao's face was a little gloomy. Feeling Su Qingsang's gaze on him, he smiled at her, pursed his lips, and silently pulled Su Qingsang's hand to the other side. Su Qingsang's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but in the end she didn't say a word. Hua Jinyao had told Hua Mingguang about what Lu Tongjia had done. During this period of time, the relationship between the mother and son had once again fallen to a freezing point. Su Qingsang looked at his chiseled side profile and thought of the look in his eyes just now. She felt a faint pain in her heart. She reached out and held Hua Jinyao's hand. Not wanting Hua Jinyao to think of Lu Tongjia again, she pretended to be relaxed and said, "That little girl just now was really cute, wasn't she?" Yes. He didn't see it, and he didn't even see what the mother looked like. He only thought of Lu Tongjia, and his mind even unconsciously recalled that childhood scene. In fact, before the accident, that kind of scene had happened many times in the Hua family with the brothers. Lu Tongjia used to be a good mother. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang suddenly stopped and looked at him. Her eyes were a little eager. Why don't we have a child too? Hua Jinyao froze for a moment and turned to look at Su Qingsang. He didn't respond to her words. Really? I think I can also learn to be a good mother. Su Qingsang blinked and her eyes were full of encouragement. I believe you will also be a good father. Hua Jinyao didn't speak. His lips were tightly pursed. He was obviously not interested in her proposal. Su Qingsang was a little depressed. She wanted to say a few more words, but Hua Jinyao had already taken her hand and walked forward. Hua Jinyao, let's talk about it later. Later? Did that mean it could be discussed? Su Qingsang actually didn't mean that they had to have a child now. But she was really willing to try what Li Qianxue said. Maybe the relationship between Hua Jinyao and Lu Tongjia would ease after having a child. Hua Jinyao didn't give her a chance to ask any more. I think I saw a white swan just now. Let's go and take a look. He changed the topic, so Su Qingsang naturally couldn't continue. During the rest of the time, Hua Jinyao didn't even give her a chance to speak. It didn't matter. Maybe she could try to get Hua Jinyao to agree in other ways. Or rather, he had to agree. Su Qingsang thought that Hua Jinyao's attitude during the day had at least softened. So that night she began to put it into practice. She changed into the pajamas that Hua Jinyao had bought for her and sprayed some perfume for the first time. Looking at herself in the mirror, which was completely different from usual, Su Qingsang began to feel embarrassed. She took a deep breath and gave herself an encouraging look in the mirror before walking out of the bathroom. Hua Jinyao took a shower first today. At the moment he was lying on the bed reading a book. The faint fragrance in the air suddenly made him raise his head. The first thing he saw was the extremely sexy Su Qingsang, whose clothes barely covered her figure. He narrowed his eyes and watched her approach step by step. Aren't you tired? Wasn't she tired after playing outside for a whole day? Su Qingsang shook her head, lifted one foot and half knelt on the bed. She touched Hua Jinyao's face with one hand. Hua Jinyao smelled the perfume on her body. He put the book in his hand aside and was about to take the initiative, but Su Qingsang didn't give him the chance. Su Qingsang believed that Hua Jinyao couldn't resist her move today. Although this move was old-fashioned, it worked on Hua Jinyao. As expected, Hua Jinyao couldn't wait for what she was going to do next. Slowly she sank into it. When she was lost, she thought that Hua Jinyao would do as she wished. However, she found that he didn't forget to get up and take precautions at such a time. Something flashed through Su Qingsang's mind so fast that she couldn't catch it. And then, Hua Jinyao didn't give her any more time to continue thinking about it. In the next few days, Su Qingsang tried all kinds of methods and changed into all kinds of pajamas. She even went online and bought some pajamas that she was too embarrassed to wear according to Hua Jinyao's preferences. However, she found that the final result was not satisfactory. No matter how passionate and addicted Hua Jinyao was, he wouldn't forget to take precautions at the last moment and not give her the slightest chance of getting pregnant. Even if she explicitly hinted, Hua Jinyao didn't move at all. At night, Su Qingsang rubbed the back of her waist. After taking a shower, she changed into her usual cotton pajamas and quickly lay down on the bed. Hua Jinyao turned over and got on the bed as usual, but stopped when he saw the cotton pajamas she was wearing. Not playing today? Who was playing? Su Qingsang pulled up the quilt to cover her body. Only a small face was left exposed outside. Her eyes stared straight at Hua Jinyao, and there was obvious dissatisfaction in them. He knew about it, didn't he? He knew about her plans, but he still looked at her like this. During this period of time he was like, Su Qingsang turned her face away and decided to ignore Hua Jinyao today. Hua Jinyao looked at her angry little face and couldn't help but kiss her on the cheek. Are you angry? No. She had done it herself. What was there to be angry about? And she said she wasn't angry? Hua Jinyao turned over and lay down next to her. He reached out and pulled her waist into his arms. He lowered his head and gently kissed the top of her hair. You're not coming today? I'm not coming. Not just today. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and the day after that, I'm never coming. Hua Jinyao couldn't help but laugh at her angry words. He couldn't help but kiss her cheek. Don't touch me. My back hurts. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep. Her physical strength wasn't as good as Hua Jinyao's. In order to have a child, she had really spent a lot of effort to accompany him. But in the end, the result was still not satisfactory. She wanted to cry, okay? Hua Jinyao's big hand was on her waist. Su Qingsang was really afraid. Really, don't come. I'm tired. As she spoke, she wanted to hide to the side, but the bed was only so big. How could she hide? Hua Jinyao didn't let go of his hand. Instead, he gently rubbed the back of her waist. His strength was moderate and he rubbed on the spot. Su Qingsang's back pain was relieved a lot, and the expression on her face also relaxed a little. Wife. Hua Jinyao's strength didn't decrease and he rubbed her more and more relaxed. Let's spend a few years alone, okay? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She wanted to raise her head, but Hua Jinyao pressed her waist to stop her from moving. It had been a long time since she heard him talk about this. I don't want to lie to you. In fact, I'm really not ready yet. I don't know how to be a father. When he spoke, his chest trembled. Su Qingsang bit her lip. It was the first time she heard him mention the word father. She suddenly thought of something. What did Hua Mingguang do during the years when Lu Tongjia ignored him? As Hua Jinyao's father, he didn't bear the responsibility that a father should have. He didn't try to ease the relationship between Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao. If she seriously thought about it, Hua Mingguang was not a good father, was he? Hua Jinyao changed his hand and continued to rub her waist. Isn't it good for us to be like this now? Why should we let a child share our time and energy with each other? He was right, but Su Qingsang knew that it was just an excuse. She didn't raise her head again. She hugged Hua Jinyao and rubbed her face against his chest. Okay. We'll talk about it later. She didn't say anything more. If he didn't want to have children, then so be it. Since she had promised him time, she would wait slowly. One day, when he thought it through and was willing to have children, she would talk about it. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had talked it out, so the special exercise they did every night was naturally reduced a lot. At least, Su Qingsang really couldn't do it, and she didn't have the confidence to do it every day. In fact, Su Qingsang had considered not only Lu Tongjia's position, but also Hua Jinyao's. As the eldest grandson of the Hua family, she was worried that he would have his responsibilities. But if he didn't think about it at all, then why should she worry? When she relaxed, Su Qingsang was able to enjoy the time they spent together. Naturally, their relationship would be better. As for the thing that caused Lu Tongjia and Hu Jinyao to fall out, Su Qingsang chose not to mention it. Chapter 568. Su Qingsang's car was parked outside the villa. She looked inside. During the day, the reflective glass made it impossible to see if there was anyone inside. She couldn't help but take out her phone and call Xiang Kaiping. 3 minutes later, Xiang Kaiping came out and opened the door for her. Su Qingsang stood at the door and handed the fruit and some supplements she had bought before she came to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, this is good for your waist. And this? Our hospital's new waist physical therapy device. I've asked a few patients and they say it's quite useful." Su Qingsang explained. Xiang Kaiping took it and nodded. She thanked Su Qingsang in a very low voice and let Su Qingsang into the house. The villa was very clean and cozy. It was very Xiang Caiping style. Su Qingsang sat down and didn't worry too much. Xiang Kaiping said that Su Peijian would have gone to work at this time. She wouldn't come back until night. In fact, even if it was night, she might not come back, but Xiang Kaiping wouldn't tell Su Qingsang this. She got up and went to the kitchen to cut some fruit and poured a glass of juice. Su Qingsang looked at the glass of orange juice. Xiang Kaiping actually remembered. She felt a little sour at the tip of her nose. She just lowered her head to hide the emotion. "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. Why don't you hire a nanny to help you do these things?" "I hired a nanny. She went out to buy groceries. I'm not too old to move. I'll do it myself if I can." Su Qingsang had always known that she couldn't stay idle, so she didn't talk about that topic. Instead, she took out the waist physical therapy device and taught her how to use it. It's very simple. The device wasn't cheap. There weren't many people in the hospital who could afford it. Su Qingsang hadn't used it herself. She only found out after asking her colleagues. This time she explained it very clearly. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang's side profile and felt a little sad. "You don't look very well. Have you been too tired recently?" In the end, he still said those words of concern. Su Qingsang had already explained the function of the physical therapy device and was packing up. She stopped because of Xiang Caiping's words. "No, I'm not tired." Previously, the matter of wanting a child was a little too much. Indeed, he hadn't slept well. He had been catching up on his sleep for the past 2 days. Otherwise, the dark circles under her eyes would have been worse a few days ago. Hu Jinyao also knew that, so he didn't touch her these days. He only hugged her to sleep so that she could rest well. "I know you and Hu Jinyao are still young, but your body is your own. You should take care of yourself and not indulge yourself too much." Xiang Kaiping had lived with Su Qingsang, so she knew what had happened between Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao. After saying that, he felt that he had said too much. These things were no longer something that she could manage. Su Qingsang was stunned and blushed. But at the same time, he felt the warmth of being cared for by his mother. "Auntie, you too." Su Qingsang gently held her hand. "No matter what, you have to take care of yourself. Remember to take these tonics. Also, make sure to use this physical therapy equipment." Xiang Kaiping looked at her hand and nodded gently. Su Qingsang didn't stay for dinner. She had hesitated for a while before deciding to visit Xiang Kaiping today. Before she left, the woman who helped Xiang Kaiping came back. Su Qingsang breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that someone was taking care of her. When she was about to leave, Su Qingsang couldn't help but say that to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, if there's nothing else, call me. I'll come to see you then." Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping both knew that the so-called nothing else referred to when Su Peijian was not at home. Xiang Kaiping looked at her and nodded vigorously. After that, Su Qingsang chose to visit Xiang Kaiping a few times when Su Peijian was not at home. She didn't know if it was because of the tonics she bought, or because she visited Xiang Kaiping. She could feel that Xiang Caiping's complexion was much better. She was also using the physical therapy equipment. It was said that her back pain had been greatly relieved. There weren't many things that Su Qingsang could do, but these few things made her feel calm. She didn't tell anyone about visiting Xiang Kaiping, except for the first time to Hu Jinyao, especially Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue didn't know that she would visit Xiang Kaiping. She and Li Qianxue had video calls almost every day and they talked about many things. However, there were 2 things that the mother and daughter had a tacit understanding not to mention. One was Su Peijian, and the other was Su Qinghui. Su Qingsang just wanted to be nice to Xiang Kaiping and make her feel better. Xiang Kaiping also knew that, so she had a tacit understanding not to mention Su Peijian or anyone else in the Su family in front of her when she visited. This was the tacit understanding between her and Xiang Kaiping. Every time Xiang Kaiping called her, it was after Su Peijian had gone out, so Su Peijian never knew that Su Qingsang had been there. The weather was getting hotter and it was already early summer in Rong City. Su Peijian returned home that day and found that Xiang Kaiping was not in the living room. This was really a bit surprising. Usually at this time she would be downstairs waiting for her to eat. Even if she knew that she would not come back, she would still wait there. Su Peijian was not used to not seeing her today. After thinking about it, she went upstairs to Xiang Caiping's room to see what she was doing. Before she reached the door, she heard Xiang Kaiping talking to Ms. Zhao, the housekeeper hired by the family. She was going to go straight in, but she suddenly stopped. Sister Xiang, that Miss Su, will she come to see you in a few days? She just came a few days ago and should be here in 2 days. What's the matter? I tried this physical therapy device of yours and it really works. I want Miss Su to bring me one. I can give her money. When Ms. Zhao was young, she did not have good confinement, so she also had a problem with her back from time to time. The last time she came, she had a back pain again, so Xiang Kaiping asked her to try it. Today, Ms. Zhao accidentally stretched her back when she was moving things, so Xiang Kaiping asked her to try the physical therapy device again. Okay. Why don't I call her and ask her to bring one over for you first? You can use it at home. Thank you in advance, Sister Xiang. Ms. Zhao's voice was filled with gratitude. To be honest, Miss Su is really a good person. Is she your sister's daughter? Xiang Kaiping was silent. She could not answer this question. Since she did not want to say, Ms. Zhao did not ask. I heard that she is a doctor? She is so young, but she is really capable. Yes. She is an obstetrician. In fact, Su Qingsang was very busy in the hospital. She had to go back to the Hua family to spend the weekends with old Master Hua. She had to build a relationship with Hua Jinyao. She could still find time to visit him. Speaking of which, it was really thoughtful of her. She is so capable. He was young and capable. She is also a good person. Look at the tonics on your table. They were all bought by Miss Su, right? Yes. Xiang Kaiping nodded. The table was full of tonics suitable for middle-aged and elderly people. They were all bought by Su Qingsang. She did not buy them randomly. She was a doctor, so she bought them after careful selection. Apart from anything else, Xiang Caiping's sleep during this period of time was indeed much better. Miss Su is so nice. You can take her as your goddaughter next time. Ms. Zhao was in physical therapy, so she tried to find something to say. It's a pity that you don't have a son. Otherwise you could marry her. She is married, Xiang Kaiping said lightly. Married at such a young age? I can't tell. Her husband is so lucky. Yes. Of course he was lucky to have a wife like her. He must be lucky to have a daughter like her. Su Peijian stood at the door with a sullen expression. She clenched the phone in her hand, her expression extremely gloomy. Without alerting the people inside, Su Peijian left quietly and returned to her room. She sat down on the bed in the room, still holding her phone in her hand. She had been very busy recently. 2 or 3 supermarkets were not enough for her ambition. She wanted more. She needed more, which meant that she needed more resources now. And Hui Yifan was her best resource now. After all, she had been carefully trained by Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui. Naturally, she had her own sharp side when it came to business. It was true that Hui Yifan and she worked together and used each other. But when they had a common goal, they would certainly work together. Hui Yifan was determined to prove himself. Under her instigation, under her encouragement, he secretly opened a company. The company was under her and Hui Yifan's name. It was now in the beginning stage. They needed orders. Su Peijian had just handed over the plan, but Hui Yifan was bold enough to take out an order from Tianyu Group. This was the first order of their new company. Su Peijian attached great importance to it, and so did Hui Yifan. The two of them had been extremely busy recently, so Su Peijian had neglected Xiang Kaiping. Not to mention coming back for dinner. Sometimes she didn't even come back to sleep. Today it was because Hui Yifan went to confirm the final details with the other party that she remembered to come back to see Xiang Kaiping. Unexpectedly, Xiang Kaiping didn't need her to see her at all. Someone was already rushing to be a filial daughter. Su Qingsang, I haven't thought about how to deal with you for your previous troubles. But you came to provoke me first. What? Not only did you snatch away the mother who raised me, but now you're not even letting go of the mother who gave birth to me? Su Peijian felt that she really couldn't take this lying down. Her disgust and hatred for Su Qingsang doubled at this moment. She stood up and paced back and forth in the room. She suddenly took out her phone and flipped through the photos of Su Qingsang and the wild man. In fact, she had seen the photos of the man and Su Qingsang hugging each other a few times over the past few days. It was just a faked photo. If there was anything, it was not solid evidence. If she wanted solid evidence, she was afraid that she would need more evidence. Su Peijian flipped through the photos again and still felt that they were not suitable for direct use. After thinking about it, she sent the single photo of Zhang Yichen to Hui Yifan. Chapter 569. Su Peijian didn't expect things to become so interesting. The man named Zhang Yichen was Hui Yifan's uncle? That would be fun. Su Peijian flipped through the photos again. She didn't have a plan at first, but now she was starting to have a different idea. Hu Jinyao couldn't really suspect Su Qingsang with just a few photos that were out of place. After all, Hu Jinyao was not stupid. He could see what she could see. She could also edit the photos and use high-end Photoshop software to make the two of them look like they were together. However, that kind of method was too low-end and she would not do it. So, how could he make these two people really have a relationship? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian. It was rare that Su Peijian had been eating at home these past 2 days. She wanted to call Su Qingsang and ask her to send a physical therapy device to Ms. Zhao. Su Peijian, on the other hand, had been staying at home for the past few days. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking at me like that?" Su Peijian gracefully drank the soup in front of her. Ms. Zhao's cooking skills were pretty good. Why are you free today? Not only am I free today? Haven't I been staying at home with you these days? Su Peijian raised her eyebrows and looked confused. "Mom, you don't like me staying at home with you?" Yes. He just felt that it was a little abnormal and strange. Xiang Kaiping couldn't help but take another look at Su Peijian. She seemed to be in a good mood. "As long as you like it, Mom." As Su Peijian spoke, she picked up some food for Xiang Kaiping. "Mom, try this." Xiang Kaiping looked at the piece of fish in her bowl, then at Su Peijian. She was confused by Su Peijian's overjoyed attitude. His lips moved, wanting to say something, but in the end he swallowed it back. "All right, Mom. I have a boyfriend." "Boyfriend?" Xiang Kaiping looked up at her. "Where are you from? What does he do? How old are you?" Xiang Kaiping couldn't help but feel nervous. When she met Su Qingsang, she was already married. She couldn't care less even if she wanted to. But Su Peijian, on top of her concern, was also worried. "Mom, look at you. I'm talking about a boyfriend now, not marriage. When our relationship is more stable, I'll bring him to see you." Xiang Kaiping knew that Su Peijian always had her own ideas. Naturally, there was no need to say anything else. However, he was still worried. "You just arrived in Rong City, so you don't know much about the people here. It's better to be cautious in everything." "Mom, don't worry. I promise you'll be satisfied. Be it family background or anything else, there's nothing to pick on." The more she said that, the more worried Xiang Kaiping became. When it came to Su Peijian, she realized that she couldn't be too gentle or too heavy. She didn't know what to do. Hu Jinyao looked at the report in front of him and raised his head to look at Yang Wenchang's face. There was still a trace of uncertainty in his eyes. Is he crazy? Yang Wenchang couldn't answer Hu Jinyao's question. If Hu Jinyao hadn't asked him to keep an eye on Su Peijian, he wouldn't have found out. Hu Jinyao didn't know what expression to put on at this moment. Lu Tongjia had tried her best to hand over Chanyu Group to Hui Yifan, but he ran off to start a company at this time? Hu Jinyao and the others all had their own companies. Some were for fun, and some were given to them by their elders to train their abilities. Hu Jinyao had a few other companies. The scale of his companies couldn't be compared to Chanyu Group. The projects he ran were also completely different from Chanyu Group. The others were in the same situation. No one was like Hui Yifan, who wanted to snatch the orders from Chanyu Group. Hu Mingguang and Old Master Hu wouldn't allow such a thing to happen, let alone Hu Jinyao. They didn't stop the younger generation from developing their own businesses, and they also encouraged them to have their own ideas and insights. However, the premise was that they couldn't harm the interests of their families or Chanyu Group. "President Hua, what do you think we should do?" "What should he do?" Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes and stared at the document in his hand. He suddenly looked up at Yang Wenchang with an obvious calculating look in his eyes. "Don't do anything for the time being." Hu Jinyao thought for a moment and added, "No. It's not that we don't do anything. There's still something we can do." Yang Wenchang looked at Hu Jinyao. At this moment, Hu Jinyao's eyes were full of calculation. After listening to Hu Jinyao's instructions, his eyes lit up. "President Hua, that's a good idea. But when the time comes, I'm afraid that Vice President Hui Yifan will go crazy, right?" "Then let him go crazy." Hu Jinyao wouldn't sympathize with Hui Yifan. He understood that he wanted to make money and gain benefits, but there were some things that couldn't be crossed. And now he was waiting to see Hui Yifan fail. Hu Jinyao was waiting for Hui Yifan to turn the tables, and Su Peijian was also waiting for an opportunity. After being with Hui Yifan, she gradually figured out the relationship between the people in the Hu family. Su Peijian, who was born in the Su family and had been carefully trained by Li Qianxue, was much more sensitive than Su Qingsang in this regard. She used the shortest time possible to figure out the relationship between Hui Yangxiu and Hui Yangyuan's families. She also found out a very interesting thing, which was that Hu Jinyao had a good relationship with his good uncle. She just didn't know what kind of expression Hu Jinyao would have when he found out that his good uncle actually coveted his wife and even slept with his wife. Su Peijian didn't expect the opportunity to come so soon. What did you say? Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifan. The two of them had just gone crazy. She was very sticky and was about to take a shower when she heard Hui Yifan's words. I said, Old Master wants you to go to the Hua family for the Dragon Boat Festival. Hui Yifan poured a glass of red wine from the bedside table and took a sip. He looked at Su Peijian with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Why? You don't want to go? Don't think that he didn't know how much Su Peijian wanted this opportunity. Of course I'll go. Su Peijian propped up her body and turned to lie on his chest. There should be a lot of relatives coming to your family for the Dragon Boat Festival, right? Yes. My great-aunt and great-uncle's family will all come this time. Su Qingsang hadn't been in Rong City during the Lunar New Year. After she came, it was rare for them to get together. This time, Hui Yangxiu's husband Zhang Xinghua happened to be on vacation. He agreed to come and see his grandnephew's wife. Your great-aunt's family? Doesn't that mean your uncle will come too? Yes. Hui Yifan put the wine glass in his hand aside and looked at Su Peijian. I find that you seem to care a lot about my uncle. Why? Are you jealous? Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifan, and the smile on her face grew brighter. A little. I care about him because I've never had a soldier in my life before. Also, I find that your grandfather seems to like him very much. It had been more than a month since she found out about Su Qingsang and Zhang Yichen. She had done a lot of homework. Old Master Hu seemed to like this nephew very much, and Zhang Yichen respected Old Master Hu very much. As long as he was in Rong City, he would come to visit Old Master Hu. Yes. My uncle is young and promising. My grandfather likes him very much. Hui Yifan suddenly turned over and pressed Su Peijian under his body. Woman, I don't like it when you talk about other men in front of me. I'm not talking about other men. Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifan with a meaningful smile. I'm trying to please your grandfather for you. Really? Then I'll thank you in advance. Hu Jinyao liked her cleverness. He lowered his head and began to plunder again. It was the family dinner for the Dragon Boat Festival. Su Peijian and Hu Jinyao arrived early. However, some people arrived even earlier than them. Hu Yangyuan came with his eldest son and daughter-in-law. His youngest son was here, and his daughter-in-law was on a business trip. However, a few of his grandchildren also came along this time. His children were a few years younger than Hu Jinyao's. They were sitting in a circle together. Hu Yangxiu came with her son and daughter. Her eldest son, Zhang Liangzi, and her eldest daughter, Zhang Hanlei. She didn't see Zhang Yichen. It was said that he had a mission yesterday and would be late. However, Zhang Hanlei's and Zhang Liangzi's children were both here. The two families sat together and the living room was very lively. We two sisters married two brothers. Speaking of which, it's really a good story. Sister, don't you think so? Su Qingsang looked at Su Peijian's acting as if it was real, then looked at her arm that was hooked around her and nodded. Yes, it's really a good story. When she said the word good, she deliberately raised her voice a little. It sounded very much like the dialect of Lin City. In the dialect of Lin City, the pronunciation of good and fake were the same. Others couldn't tell, but Su Peijian definitely knew what she was talking about. Of course, Su Peijian understood. But she was sure that Su Qingsang wouldn't expose her. The smile on her face became brighter and brighter. Sister, when I think about marrying into the same family as you, I'm really happy. Yes, I'm very happy too. Su Qingsang said lightly with a decent smile on her face, but her hand subtly pulled Su Peijian's hand away. Su Peijian didn't let her pull her hand away. Instead, she moved her face closer to Su Qingsang and said in a very soft voice. Su Qingsang, seeing me appear in front of you like this and you can't get rid of me, does it make you feel very uncomfortable? Only they could hear her words. She still had a smile on her face. People who didn't know better would think that the two sisters were talking happily. Su Qingsang looked at the pride on her face, and the smile on her face was even more friendly than she looked. It's not uncomfortable. I'm actually quite happy. Su Qingsang mimicked her and spoke with a smile. Do you know why I'm very happy? After all, seeing the once high and mighty young lady of the Su family try so hard to make trouble for me. This matter in itself makes me very happy. What goes around comes around. Didn't you dislike me? Didn't you disdain to care about me? Then why did you appear like this now? Su Peijian almost couldn't hold the smile on her face. The two sisters were very close, and only Su Qingsang saw the flash of resentment in Su Peijian's eyes. Her expression didn't change, and she successfully pulled her hand out and placed it on Su Peijian's shoulder. It looked like the two sisters were whispering to each other. Su Qingsang, don't be too proud. Life is full of ups and downs. You can't always be proud. Su Peijian couldn't hold the smile on her face. Yes, I know that life is full of ups and downs, but no matter what, there is one thing that can't be changed. What? That is, you can never be the young lady of the Su family again. Li Qinshua's daughter is me. It wasn't that Su Qingsang didn't know how to hurt people, but she didn't care. And the premise of her disdain was that Su Peijian didn't provoke her. Su Peijian's face was ugly and her body stiffened. She almost stood up, but Su Qingsang pressed her shoulder at the right time. The smile on her face became softer and softer. Sister, you should pay attention to your image. This is the Hua family, and you haven't officially married Hua Yifan yet. In other words, there were still variables in this matter. Hua Yifan might just be playing with her, and it was still uncertain whether she could marry into the Hua family in the end. But she was different. She was now the legitimate young lady of the Hua family. Su Peijian never knew that Su Qingsang had such a sharp tongue. The smile on her face became very awkward. If it weren't for the last bit of reason reminding her that she couldn't lose her temper in this situation. She couldn't be angry. If she really got angry or lost her temper, it would be exactly what Su Qingsang wanted. Thank you for reminding me, sister. Don't worry, we will definitely become sisters-in-law. Su Qingsang nodded and patted Su Peijian's shoulder. Okay. I'm looking forward to it. They faced each other and looked at each other. How could Su Peijian not understand the meaning in Su Qingsang's eyes? Looking forward to what? Looking forward to her not marrying. Su Peijian couldn't go on. She felt that she wouldn't be able to control herself and wanted to slap Su Qingsang. She forced herself to calm down, then looked at Su Qingsang and gave her a meaningful look. Then she got up and sat down next to Hua Yifan. Hua Yifan could tell that something was wrong with Su Peijian's eyes. He raised his eyebrows silently. Old Master Hua didn't miss their little tricks. Hua Yifan saw it too and was very sure of it. Su Qingsang didn't suffer any losses. Okay. No wonder she was his wife. Su Peijian's smile was a little stiff. However, it was only for a moment. It's nothing. Sister asked me when the wedding is going to be held. Whenever you want. I said this matter still depends on Grandpa. Su Peijian glanced at Hua Yifan, then at Old Master Hua. If Grandpa doesn't object to me marrying into the Hua family, of course I can do it any time. Not at all. Old Master Hua smiled. During this period of time he felt that Su Peijian was a good person. Knowledgeable and insightful. Most importantly, she and Hua Yifan hit it off. Hua Jinyao was his grandson, but so was Hua Yifan. He was impartial and hoped that both of his grandsons would be happy. While they were discussing the wedding, Hua Yangxiu heard it and wanted to ask when the wedding would be held. Someone else came from the other end. Zhang Yichen. He was on a mission yesterday. After finishing his mission this morning, he rushed to Rong City as soon as possible. When he saw Old Master Hua, he greeted him first and then walked to Hua Yangxiu. Mom. Both of Hua Yangxiu's children were in the army. She cared about both of them. However, she loved her youngest son very much. Look at you. You seem to have lost weight again. No matter how many missions you are on, you have to pay attention to your meals. You always eat irregular meals. Your stomach will be bad in the future. Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. He was used to this kind of nagging every time they met. After greeting the other elders, it was the turn of the younger generation. When he greeted Su Qingsang, his eyes lingered on her face for a second. Not much, just a second. No one noticed that second except for Su Peijian. She had been staring at Zhang Yichen since he entered the door. She understood him. She understood every expression on his face and every look in his eyes. It was an extremely restrained and tolerant emotion. She even wanted to applaud this man. He was really tolerant. It was already shocking that he fell in love with his niece-in-law. She didn't expect him to be so restrained and tolerant. Except for that 1 second he didn't look at Su Qingsang again. If Su Peijian hadn't been paying attention to him, if she hadn't known what he was thinking, she probably wouldn't have noticed it. What are you looking at? Hui Yifan noticed her line of sight and followed her line of sight. Zhang Yichen had already walked to his father and sat down. He was in the same army as Zhang Xinghua, but they didn't see each other often. Because they were in different military regions, they could only see each other when they went home. However, both of them had their own things to do. Sometimes they didn't even see each other once a month. Nothing. Su Peijian shook her head. Seeing Zhang Yichen, her heart, which had been hurt by Su Qingsang, finally calmed down a little. She looked at Zhang Yichen and then at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang didn't notice. She didn't know what Zhang Yichen was thinking. She was glad that she didn't send the photo to Hu Jinyao. There were a lot of people, so the living room couldn't be quiet. The sound of people talking and talking to each other perfectly covered Zhang Yichen's thoughts. More importantly, he wouldn't allow his emotions to leak out in the slightest on such an occasion. Even so, Su Peijian, who had been paying attention to him, noticed the way Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang. At that time, Su Qingsang seemed to be going to the bathroom. Zhang Yichen glanced at her. Although he quickly looked away, Su Peijian felt that it was getting more and more interesting. If a person kept suppressing his feelings, what would happen in the end? She was looking forward to it. Lu Tongjia noticed Zhang Yichen's gaze as well. She couldn't help but look at Su Qingsang. She found that Su Qingsang still had some dignity. She didn't openly flirt with Zhang Yichen, which made Lu Tongjia feel relieved. If the two of them were really that shameless, she wouldn't be able to tolerate it for even a minute. There were a lot of guests at the moment, so she didn't have time to argue with Su Qingsang. She could only slowly warn Su Qingsang about her image in the future. Almost all the important relatives had arrived today. Lu Tongjia didn't choose to have lunch at the Huo mansion. Instead, she chose to have lunch at the hotel where old Master Li and the others had gone to. Chapter 570. Zhang Yichen's car was parked outside. He was about to walk to his car. Hu Jinyao's car happened to be heading out. He saw Zhang Yichen and greeted him. "Uncle, it's not far. It's not far anyway. Let's take my car. I need to talk to you about something." Zhang Yichen stood there without moving. Zhang Xinghua and the others had already gotten into their respective cars. He paused for a second and finally got into Hu Jinyao's car. Lu Tongjia had already gotten into Hu Mingguang's car and left. Behind them was Hu Yifan's car. Sitting in Hu Yifan's car, Su Peijian watched Zhang Yichen get into Hu Jinyao's car from afar. The smile on her face grew brighter. Hu Jinyao, you think you're smart and powerful, but you can't even tell that someone is coveting your wife? You're such an idiot. Forget it. I'll be nice and give you a reminder in case you continue being stupid. Su Qingsang sat in the front seat. Zhang Yichen naturally got into the car from behind. "How many days off do you have this time, uncle?" 3 days. His reply was concise and to the point, without a single extra word. Su Qingsang glanced at the rearview mirror. Somehow she felt that Zhang Yichen was in a bad mood. She didn't want to explore Zhang Yichen's mind, so she turned around. She saw a mobile stall selling roasted sweet potatoes. Her eyes lit up immediately. But she quickly remembered that they were going to eat now. If she ate a roasted sweet potato, she wouldn't be able to eat later. There was a traffic light in front of them. Hu Jinyao stopped the car and saw Su Qingsang looking at the sweet potato stall at the intersection. "Don't tell me you want to eat sweet potatoes again." "Can't I?" Su Qingsang glanced at him. "They're delicious. We'll have dinner soon. If you eat a sweet potato now, how are you going to eat later?" "I know. I'm just looking." He said he was just looking, but the look in her eyes didn't mean that at all. Hu Jinyao felt helpless. He stopped the car at the intersection in front of them when the traffic light turned green. He got out of the car and quickly bought a sweet potato from the stall under Su Qingsang's smiling eyes. He got in the car and put it in Su Qingsang's hand. "Here." Su Qingsang took the roasted sweet potato and smiled like a contented kitten. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. If you don't eat later, I won't let you touch this thing again." Hu Jinyao sounded like he was lecturing a child. Su Qingsang stuck her tongue out and made a face at Hu Jinyao. "I'll eat half and you can take care of the rest. Then I'll be able to eat." Hu Jinyao didn't want to talk to her anymore. He turned around and went to get the car. "I can't? That would be such a waste." Hu Jinyao reached out his hand and rubbed Su Qingsang's cheek. "All right, hurry up and eat. Leave the rest to me, okay? Jinyao, you're so nice." Su Qingsang leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. After the kiss, she realized that Zhang Yichen was still sitting in the back of the car. She blushed. He hurriedly backed away, his face full of discomfort. Hua Jinyao noticed it too, but he didn't take it to heart. To him, no matter how old Zhang Yichen was, he was still his elder. Looking at Su Qingsang, he felt a little helpless. You don't have to go that far, do you? You're so satisfied with a roasted sweet potato. Su Qingsang's reaction was to give him a look that said, you don't understand. This kind of pure happiness was something he would never understand. Out of politeness, Su Qingsang asked Zhang Yichen if he wanted some sweet potato. Zhang Yichen looked at her and shook his head expressionlessly. Su Qingsang felt so stupid. Did she think everyone was like her? Satisfied with a sweet potato? The sweet taste of the sweet potato made her forget her embarrassment. She only ate a small part of it, then stopped eating. Before getting out of the car, she held up the remaining half of the sweet potato and looked at Hua Jinyao. Jinyao. Hua Jinyao looked at her. Without reaching out his hand, he finished the sweet potato in a few bites. On the other side, Zhang Yichen got out of the car without saying anything to them. The car door slammed loudly. Su Qingsang's hand, which was holding the sweet potato, trembled. Seeing that Hua Jinyao was heading to the hotel, she couldn't help but look at him. Is Uncle angry? How can that be? Uncle doesn't get angry so easily. Hua Jinyao also saw Zhang Yichen's back. That strange feeling from before came again. In fact, he asked Zhang Yichen to get in his car today to test him. Zhang Yichen wasn't an emotional person, but thinking about it, it seemed that every time Su Qingsang was around, his emotions would be very abnormal. Hua Jinyao was suspicious. His eyes fell on Su Qingsang's face. She didn't seem to take Zhang Yichen's behavior to heart. He was more or less relieved. However, he couldn't help but want to test Zhang Yichen. There were a lot of people eating together. One table couldn't fit all of them. 2 big tables were filled with people. The elders sat at one table and the rest of the younger generation sat at the other. For some reason, when Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao sat together, Zhang Yichen sat next to Hua Jinyao. Zhang Yichen and Hua Jinyao were good friends. When they sat together, no one would think too much. Sitting next to Su Qingsang was Su Peijian and Hua Yifan. Su Peijian had deliberately sat down a little later just to sit with Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao had to drive later, so he didn't drink. Su Qingsang didn't like drinking, so she politely declined. However, Su Peijian didn't want to let it go. She raised her glass and looked at Zhang Yichen. This is the first time I've met you, uncle. Let me propose a toast to you. Su Peijian raised her glass and proposed a toast to Zhang Yichen. In the past, Zhang Yichen wouldn't drink. But today, for some reason, he drank it. Su Peijian smiled. After drinking half of the wine in her glass, she glanced at Hua Yifan. Aren't you going to propose a toast to your uncle? Hua Yifan glanced at her. He didn't understand what she meant. Although Zhang Yichen wasn't as close to them as he was to Hua Jinyao, they had a good relationship. Uncle, let me propose a toast to you. With these 2 people taking the lead, Hua Manzi, Hua Yang, Hua Qinghan, and Hua Qingwan all came to propose a toast to Zhang Yichen. However, if Wei Sihai and Wei Ximing's cousins came to propose a toast to Zhang Yichen. Seriously speaking, this generation of people had a lot of opportunities to meet each other. However, Zhang Yichen showed up the least often. Every Chinese New Year he was either on a mission or in the army. It was extremely rare for him to be able to attend a gathering with his entire family. Zhang Yichen used to have a lot of self-control. Today, maybe it was because of the Chinese New Year, or because he hadn't gotten together with this group of people for a long time. As soon as someone proposed a toast to him, he drank all the wine. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had been lovey-dovey. Now, seeing the scene in front of her, she began to feel that something was wrong. She glanced at Hua Jinyao and signaled him to stop Zhang Yichen from drinking. After all, this group of people was 1 generation younger than Zhang Yichen. If he didn't want to drink, he could totally refuse. Hua Jinyao turned around and also noticed that something was wrong with Zhang Yichen. However, he didn't stop Zhang Yichen from drinking as Su Qingsang expected. Instead, he glanced at Su Qingsang and signaled her to pick up the glass in front of her. Neither he nor Su Qingsang had drunk any alcohol. Uncle, Qingsang and I will drink tea instead of wine. Let's toast to you. Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't understand why Hua Jinyao still wanted Zhang Yichen to drink. He had drunk quite a lot. Zhang Yichen picked up the glass and looked at Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. His eyes seemed to fall on Hua Jinyao, but the focus of his eyes was on Su Qingsang. As Hua Jinyao raised the glass, he drank all the wine in it. Su Qingsang gently pulled Hua Jinyao's sleeve, signaling him to stop toasting and the others to stop trying to persuade him. Zhang Yichen quickly turned his eyes away and continued drinking. Hua Jinyao didn't try to persuade him anymore. Just now, Zhang Yichen looked like he was drunk. Her eyes were also looking at him. For a moment he felt that he was thinking too much. Zhang Yichen's excessive drinking shocked the elders at the other table. Hua Yangxiu, Hua Yangyuan, and Old Master Hua told them to stop toasting. The group of young people settled down. Even so, Zhang Yichen was still drunk. Fortunately, he didn't drive here. Instead, he took Hua Jinyao's car. Hua Jinyao and Zhang Liangzi put Zhang Yichen in their car. Zhang Liangzi drove here. He wanted Zhang Hanlei to take care of Zhang Yichen, but Hua Jinyao said that they would be arriving at the Hua mansion soon, so Zhang Yichen could rest there. Su Peijian kept looking at Zhang Yichen with a smile on her face. That smile was so strange that Hua Yifan felt that something was wrong. My intuition tells me that you are trying to set someone up. Yes. Su Peijian didn't hide it. Why don't you guess who I want to set up? Hua Jinyao? Or Su Qingseng? Su Peijian shook her head with a smile and put her arms around Hua Yifan's neck. I really want something right now, but I don't know the person who sells it. But I believe you must have a way. What is it? Su Peijian moved closer to Hua Yifan, put her face close to his and whispered 3 words in his ear. Hua Yifan looked at her, not quite understanding what she meant. What do you want? That's none of your business. If you can ask someone to bring it here when you get back to the Hua mansion, you'll know what I want to do. Hua Yifan looked at her deeply, then made a phone call. After hanging up, he looked at Su Peijian and said, someone will bring the thing you want in 15 minutes. But I want to know, what do you want to do? Su Peijian didn't answer Hua Yifan's question immediately. She sat back in her seat and fastened her seat belt. By the way, I came to the Hua mansion a few times and observed them. I found that it's not that your aunt doesn't like Su Qingseng, but she doesn't like Hua Jinyao. May I ask why? If Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qingseng, she should have told Hua Jinyao about their relationship when she found out that Su Qingseng might be related to Zhang Yichen. But he didn't do that. Instead, he kept the matter under wraps. This meant that there were 2 possibilities. The first possibility was that Lu Tongjia loved her child and wanted to protect him. She didn't want him to see the cruel reality. However, after observing Lu Tongjia's behavior, Su Peijian deduced the second possibility. Lu Tongjia didn't like Hua Jinyao at all. Therefore, she didn't care whether he was cheated on or not. Instead, she just wanted to watch a good show. Moreover, she thought that Lu Tongjia wanted to take this opportunity to slap Hua Jinyao in the face. She wanted him to know what would happen to him if he didn't listen to Lu Tongjia and marry the woman she wanted him to marry. Hua Yifan glanced at her. He wasn't surprised by the inquisitive look in her eyes and the obvious desire to gossip. However, he didn't want to answer Su Peijian's question. I don't know. I only know that Andy has been like this since a long time ago. He knew that he used to have a big cousin. He was a very nice person. He also knew that he used to have a little cousin. She was very cute. However, after his grandmother passed away that year, the existence of these 2 people became taboo and couldn't be mentioned again. It seemed that Hua Jinyao had been hated by Lu Tongjia since then. They weren't involved in the specifics at the time, and Old Master Hua had ordered them to keep it a secret, so none of them dared to mention it, let alone figure it out. Su Peijian could tell from Hua Yifan's expression that he really didn't know. She did not feel discouraged. Perhaps this was another point that she could start with. There must be a special reason for a mother to hate her child so much. Well, if she were to add to the fire on that ground, that would be really interesting. Hua Jinyao settled Zhang Yichen in the guest room. Lu Tongjia had made the necessary arrangements a long time ago when she found out that her relatives would be staying at the Hua mansion. Zhang Yichen's room was on the 3rd floor. After all, he had always been on good terms with Old Master Hua. Old Master Hua's room was on the 3rd floor. However, Hua Jinyao didn't know about Lu Tongjia's arrangement. He wanted to go back to his room, so he directly sent Zhang Yichen to the guest room on the 2nd floor next to his own. Su Qingseng was going back to her room to rest, but for that reason she followed Hua Jinyao. She watched as Hua Jinyao walked Zhang Yichen back to his room and put him on the bed. He really seems to be very drunk. Should I ask someone to bring him a bowl of soup? Hua Jinyao didn't object. I'll call inside and ask Xia to bring it up. He turned to look at Su Qingseng. There was no worry or concern in her eyes. She looked as if a relative had come to visit her. He felt like he should be the host. You must be tired. Go back to your room and rest. I'm here. Su Qingseng didn't object. She didn't want to stay here, especially when she thought of how awkward she had been when she met Zhang Yichen several times. After she left, Hua Jinyao looked at Zhang Yichen's face, which was so red that it was almost purple. Was the look he gave Su Qingseng on purpose or not? After all, they had grown up together. Hua Jinyao didn't want to think too badly of Zhang Yichen. He waited for a while, but Xia didn't bring up the soup. He walked out of the room to ask Xia what was going on. There were many guests that day. Although Zhang Yichen was the one who drank the most, there were also people who drank a lot. The elders all drank a little. At that moment, Lu Tongjiao was ordering people to bring them the soup. Hua Jingyao stood on the stairs and listened to Lu Tongjiao's instructions. The soup would be delivered, so he didn't worry anymore. He turned and went upstairs to Zhang Yichen's room to wait. At that time, Su Peijian was helping in the kitchen. She had been here several times. Now that she was in the kitchen, Uncle Cheng and Xia didn't dare to let Su Peijian do anything. Don't be nervous. I'm not here to make trouble. I'm here to help. There are many guests outside. You want to send refreshments and drinks? Now you're even bringing soup. Auntie saw me just now, so I volunteered to help. Lu Tongjia thought that Su Peijian wanted to show off, so she waved her hand and asked her to come to the kitchen. Su Peijian liked to show off so she could do whatever she wanted. Did she really think that she could please old Master Hua like that? How naive. Xia and Jiang knew that Su Peijian came here often, so they didn't think much of it. Su Peijian stepped forward and pointed at one of the trays. This is the soup you prepared for the guests, right? Let me carry it. Xiao Jiang and Xiao Xia couldn't argue with Su Peijian, so they told her who the hangover soup was for. Xiao Jiang led Su Peijian upstairs. Su Peijian was only here to help, but this was Jiang's job. Then you lead the way. I'll carry it from behind. Su Peijian smiled warmly. Jiang let her guard down. They worked as maids in the Hua family. Their salary was higher than outside and the work wasn't too tiring. The master was quite polite to them. However, there weren't many people who were as kind as Su Peijian. Jiang enjoyed it very much. She walked in front and quickened her pace. Su Peijian followed behind her and delivered the guests who had drunk a little too much and wanted to give them soup to sober them up. Now there was only one bowl left. Su Peijian followed Jiang into the guest room that Lu Tongjia had arranged for Zhang Yichen, but she didn't find him. Jiang thought for a moment. In the past, when Zhang Yichen came, he would stay next to Hua Jinyao. Could he be here this time? Maybe he's next to young master. There's only one bowl left. Miss Su, let me do it. Sure. Su Peijian handed the tray to Jiang with a smile. Uncle's bowl is the only one left, right? Yes, this is the only one left. Let me do it. Go and rest. Thank you for today. You're welcome. It's nothing. The most important thing is to share Auntie's and Grandpa Hua's worries. Jiang nodded. She understood Su Peijian's choice. Although Su Qingsang was going to marry Hua Yifan, Lu Tongjia and Old Master Hua were the ones who had more authority in this family. She carried the soup to Zhang Yichen's room next to Hua Jinyao's. Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to leave. She walked very slowly toward the stairs. However, when she was halfway up the stairs, she turned around and walked toward Hua Jinyao's room. When she arrived at Zhang Yichen's room, Jiang had already gone in. She seemed to be able to see the sleeping figure on the bed. She knew that Zhang Yichen was dead drunk. The effect of the medicine wouldn't work immediately. Chapter 571. Zhang Yichen was indeed very drunk. His eyes were closed. The excessive alcohol and the fact that he hadn't drunk like this for a long time put him in an extremely uncomfortable state. Hua Yangxiu had come up to see him. She was touched when she saw Hua Jinyao taking care of him. She was old and had flown to Rong City early that morning. Hua Jinyao told her to go back to her room and rest. He could take care of Zhang Yichen. Hua Jinyao didn't think much of it when Xia brought the soup over. He called Zhang Yichen's name in a low voice. Seeing that Zhang Yichen didn't respond, he helped him up and let him drink. Su Peijian just wanted to make sure that Zhang Yichen drank all the soup. She didn't need to care about what happened next. She saw Zhang Yichen drink the soup to dispel the hangover. Su Peijian had only heard about this kind of thing before, but she had never tried it herself. She wouldn't try it, so she didn't know how effective it was. When Xiao Xia came out after delivering the soup, Su Peijian was nowhere to be seen. The room was quiet. Hua Jinyao stood next to Zhang Yichen and looked at him. His slightly narrowed eyes were a little worried and a little curious. Did Zhang Yichen have a misunderstanding about Su Qingsang, or? The person sleeping on the bed didn't respond. Hua Jinyao stared at him for a while and was about to leave. Zhang Yichen, who was lying on the bed, opened his eyes. Uncle? How are you? Zhang Yichen had drunk the wine. In his half-awake state, he felt that he saw Su Qingsang. The word uncle was very soft, but it sounded familiar. He had heard it somewhere before. He tried to open his eyes to see clearly, but the alcohol and the drugs stimulated the deepest desire in his heart. Qingsang? Hua Jinyao was stunned by the two simple words. He stared at Zhang Yichen's face and spoke very softly. Uncle, what did you call me? His voice was too soft to be heard clearly. Zhang Yichen felt that the voice came from far away, but it also seemed to be very close. He was drugged. Although it wasn't an aphrodisiac, the one Su Peijian chose for him could arouse the deepest desire in his heart. He blinked, trying to see the person in front of him clearly, but he couldn't. Hu Jinyao took a step forward and stood by the bed. He stared at Zhang Yichen's face, his facial features becoming more and more profound. "Uncle, who are you calling?" Qing sang. Normally, no amount of alcohol would make Zhang Yichen lose his composure. But now, the desire in his heart had reached an uncontrollable level. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Hu Jinyao's wrist. His movement was so sudden that Hu Jinyao was caught off guard. She fell against Zhang Yichen's body. Zhang Yichen hugged Hu Jinyao tightly. With the help of the drug, he couldn't even tell that the person in front of him wasn't Su Qingsang. Qingsang. The emotions that he had been suppressing were now completely released under the effects of alcohol and drugs. Even so, Zhang Yichen still cared about their identities. He didn't say anything else to Su Qingsang. Hu Jinyao couldn't move. His speculation had become a reality. With great difficulty, he propped himself up and stared at Zhang Yichen, who was bewildered and confused. "You like Qingsang?" He couldn't like her. In the end, Zhang Yichen nodded. "Yes, Qingsang, I like you. She was so special and so smart." He didn't feel it the first time they met, but he felt it again and again. In fact, he didn't spend much time with her. But because of that, he couldn't forget her. Qingsang, I like you." He hugged Hu Jinyao and whispered how much he missed him. But that was all. His strong willpower was in conflict with his inner feelings. Even if what he was seeing was just an illusion, he didn't want to and couldn't do more to Su Qingsang. The others didn't understand, but Hu Jinyao did. He restrained himself. Even when he was hugging him, he controlled his strength. He couldn't help but move away from his arms. He was strong, and Zhang Yichen was drunk at the moment, so he easily moved away from Zhang Yichen's arms. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he looked at Zhang Yichen, who was reaching for her again. He suddenly leaned forward. "Uncle, I'm married. Have you forgotten?" He didn't feel anger or hatred. He understood Su Qingsang's charm. Any man who spent time with Su Qingsang would find her good side. Zhang Yichen found it too. It was normal. Married? Zhang Yichen was confused. The Su Qingsang in front of him seemed more and more unreal. For a moment he thought he was looking at Hu Jinyao. How could it be Hu Jinyao? He grabbed Su Qingsang's hand. He looked like he was in pain. "I know you're married. I know." His voice was hoarse and incoherent, and he sounded like he was in deep pain. He knew that she was married, and her husband was his nephew. That was why he had been trying so hard to suppress it. What? Why did he fall in love with his nephew's woman? What? Why are you married? What? Wasn't I the one who met you first? Zhang Yichen's voice was filled with pain. The greatest pain was not being able to get what one wanted. Qingsang. Hu Jinyao looked at Zhang Yichen's face and Zhang Yichen looked back at him. The drug was starting to take effect. The hallucination in front of Zhang Yichen became more and more obvious. To his surprise, he saw Su Qingsang staring at him with a gentle face. Qingsang, if I were the one you met first, would you like me?" He reached out and hugged her again. "Tell me, would you like me too? Would you?" He couldn't forget the first time they met. They stood in the corridor of the hospital. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him with a faint smile on her face. She was so smart. She could tell at a glance that the woman was there to blackmail him. He couldn't forget the time when he was discussing things with Crew Cut. He thought he had hidden well. However, Su Qingsang happened to bump into him. She was scared, but she pretended to be calm. She wouldn't beg for mercy. He hadn't seen her much, but he was amazed at the first sight, fell in love with her the second, and fell in love with her the third. He still remembered how relaxed and happy she was when she was with Hu Jinyao. The more he remembered, the more he restrained himself. He knew it was impossible, so he tried his best to suppress it. But those thoughts kept rolling around in his mind and his dreams at night. He always suppressed himself during the day, but he couldn't help but think of Su Qingsang at night. The situation in front of him was different from the dream. The deepest desire in his heart was aroused. He thought that what he saw was an illusion. It was the figure in his dream. He couldn't help but ask the question he had wanted to ask the most. Qingsang, if I were the one you met first, would you like me?" He stared at the Su Qingsang in front of him, insisting on an answer. Hu Jinyao knew that Zhang Yichen was drunk and not sober, but the truth came out of his mouth. The reason why he said that was because he already had such thoughts in his mind. Uncle. He heard his wife's name coming from another man's mouth over and over again. And this man was his uncle. Hu Jingyao wasn't in a good mood. His face was a little gloomy. Qing Sang is married. He reminded him again that no matter what thoughts he had in his mind, he should throw them away and destroy them completely. Immersed in the illusion, Zhang Yichen didn't realize that it wasn't Su Qingsang who said that. He only heard Su Qingsang say that she was married. He suddenly hugged him again. I know you are married. Zhang Yichen's voice was filled with pain and bitterness. He hugged Su Qingsang tightly, unwilling to let go. I just regret that I wasn't the one who met you first. Even if I met you, Qingsang might not fall in love with you. Why? Zhang Yichen looked at the illusion in front of him. Why don't you love me? Last time when I was about to kiss you, you blushed. It wasn't a real kiss. He was just trying to intimidate her by getting close to her. But Hu Jingyao didn't know that. He only heard that Zhang Yichen kissed Su Qingsang. Last time? When was the last time? Why didn't Su Qingsang mention it to him? Hu Jingyao was still recalling every time Su Qingsang mentioned Zhang Yichen in front of him, but Zhang Yichen started again. Since you blushed at that time, does it mean that if I had the chance you might fall in love with me too? The words reeked of alcohol, but he wasn't sure. All Zhang Yichen wanted was a little comfort in his dreams. However, he didn't know that the person in front of him wasn't Su Qingsang. Hu Jingyao couldn't listen to it anymore. He gritted his teeth. The moment Zhang Yichen tightened his arms, Hu Jingyao suddenly chopped at the back of his neck. Caught off guard, Zhang Yichen passed out just like that. Hu Jingyao moved away from his arms and patted his clothes. His body quickly took a big step back. Staring at Zhang Yichen's face, he pursed his lips and looked a little angry. Zhang Yichen was coveting his wife. Even though Zhang Yichen was his uncle and they were close, Hu Jingyao couldn't stand it. Not only could he not stand it, but he was also very angry. He knew that Su Qingsang was his wife. But he still did it. Hu Jinyao's chest rose and fell violently. He stared at Zhang Yichen's face for a while, but he didn't want to stay there any longer. He turned around and went back to his room. Su Qingsang was resting in her room, with 2 or 3 thick professional books by her side. She was very focused on the books. Occasionally she would pick up a pen and make notes. Before she could finish writing, Hu Jingyao suddenly hugged her. Su Qingsang was startled and she almost dropped the pen in her hand. Jingyao. She felt that Hu Jingyao wasn't going to let go of her, so she had to put the book and pen aside. Inevitably, she had to move away from his arms for a while. But even for a while, Hu Jingyao quickly reached out and hugged her tightly again. Su Qingsang was stunned. Her body was pressed tightly in his arms and she couldn't move. Jingyao. She called him a few times, but Hu Jingyao didn't let go of her. Su Qingsang couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Hu Jingyao didn't let go. He thought of what Zhang Yichen had said. Why didn't I meet you first? What if Zhang Yichen had met Su Qingsang first? Would Su Qingsang fall in love with Zhang Yichen? Jingyao. He didn't move. Su Qingsang was even more confused. Where was Hu Jingyao just now? Weren't you taking care of my uncle? Hearing Su Qingsang mention Zhang Yichen, Hu Jingyao let go of her, stepped back and looked at Su Qingsang's face. Do you care about him? Care. They were relatives. Shouldn't he show some concern? Isn't he your uncle? Yes, I know he's my uncle. Hu Jingyao nodded. If that person hadn't been Zhang Yichen but someone else, he would have punched him. What was the saying on the internet? I treat you like a brother but you want to sleep with my wife. Wasn't that the situation he was facing now? However, Zhang Yichen wasn't just his brother. He still remembered that after the kidnapping, he had nightmares and couldn't sleep well at night. At that time, old Master Hu couldn't help him, so he hired a psychiatrist for him. However, the psychiatrist couldn't save him and he still had nightmares. It was Hu Yangxiu who suggested sending him to the army. At that time, Zhang Yichen was already in the army. Hu Jingyao followed him. They did exercises together, did morning exercises together, and did drills together. He was only a teenager at that time, but Zhang Yichen trained him like an adult. However, the effect was also very direct. He was very tired every day, extremely tired. As a result, he slept like a log at night. He didn't even have a dream, let alone a nightmare. Zhang Yichen was only a few years older than him. However, he told himself, a man's growth doesn't depend on what he has lost. It depends on what he has endured. He told himself that as a man he shouldn't keep thinking about the past. No matter what, he had to move on. He knew that even without Zhang Yichen's encouragement, he could move on. However, because of Zhang Yichen's existence, he got rid of those nightmares earlier. Later he had nightmares occasionally, but most of the time, those nightmares didn't bother him anymore. Obviously there was something wrong with him. Su Qingsang looked at him sideways and couldn't help but ask her question. What's wrong? Did you have an argument with uncle? Hua Jinyao glanced at her. Her eyes were clear and calm, without any hint of flirtation. He was sure that Zhang Yichen's feelings must be one-sided. Su Qingsang's personality meant that she would never cheat in a marriage. It wasn't her personality, nor was it her style. However, what if the person she had met was Zhang Yichen? Would she still have made the same choice? Would she have fallen in love with Zhang Yichen? After all, even he couldn't deny that Zhang Yichen was outstanding. Honey. Yes. You? If you hadn't married me, would you have fallen in love with another man? Hua Jinyao couldn't ask the rest of the question when he met Su Qingsang's clear eyes. He shook his head and hugged her tightly again. I'm fine. I just feel a little tired. He must be crazy to doubt Su Qingsang because of a drunkard's words. Zhang Yichen was drunk. Whatever he said didn't count. More importantly, he trusted Su Qingsang. He didn't want to mention Zhang Yichen anymore. He didn't want Zhang Yichen to show his existence in front of Su Qingsang. He didn't answer her question, so Su Qingsang didn't ask anymore. Her attention was diverted. If you're tired, you can rest for a while. Su Qingsang glanced at the time. It was still early for dinner anyway. You rest. I'll read. Hua Jinyao shook his head, hugged her tightly, and lay on the bed with her. You sleep with me. He held her in his arms and didn't do anything else. He rested his chin on the top of her head. He had decided to trust Su Qingsang, but he couldn't help but think of what Zhang Yichen said. He said that he had kissed Su Qingsang. Hui Yifan watched Su Peijian walk into the room. She had a smile on her face. That smile was full of calculation. Who did you give the medicine to? Su Peijian had said that she would take full responsibility for this, so he didn't ask. You're not going to give it to Su Qingsang, are you? Hua Jinyao might kill you. Who said I was giving it to Su Qingsang? I gave it to someone else. Someone else. Where did that come from? Don't ask. Anyway, I believe that what I did today will be of great help to both of us. Did you give that medicine to Hua Jinyao? I told you not to ask. Why are you still asking? Su Peijian sat on his lap and put her arms around his neck. Don't worry. Naturally, I will use it on the right person. Hui Yifan pulled her waist to his side and pinched her chin with his other hand. You're smiling like a fox. I don't believe you didn't do anything. But in this mansion, who else can make you use it? Su Peijian lowered her head and gently bit his finger. She blinked and looked at him with a seductive look. I didn't plan to do anything to Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao today. She was only planning to plant a seed of doubt. Zhang Yichen was drunk and drugged. He would definitely lose his composure. Looking at the photo and the look in his eyes, Su Qingsang could tell that he was trying to control himself. She wouldn't mind if she didn't have a chance to have sex with a man like that. Once he had the chance, the more he tried to control himself, the harder it would be to control himself. Once Zhang Yichen lost his composure, the seed of doubt would be planted in Hua Jinyao's heart. Hua Jinyao might not suspect Su Qingsang at the beginning, nor would he do anything to her at the beginning. But what if the seed grew bigger and bigger? What if the seed grew into a big tree and Hua Jinyao saw it? Would he still be able to stay calm then? Su Peijian gently brushed her lips against Hui Yifan's finger and turned her head to look at him. Don't worry. We're about to have a good show. Hui Yifan didn't like Su Peijian hiding everything from him. He gripped her chin and scanned her face with his sharp eyes. Woman, are you hiding something from me? Yes. Su Peijian didn't deny it at all. Everyone has secrets. I just don't want to tell you right now. Can't I? Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned over, pressing Su Peijian under his body. Okay. But since you don't want to tell me your secret, I have to find out about it. Then I'll have to find out about your other secrets. Su Peijian smiled. She lifted her legs and hooked them around his waist. She cooperated with him. Lu Tongjia was very busy today as the hostess of the Hua family. She had too many things to deal with. She had to take care of all the guests and settle them down. She also had to talk to some of her cousins who rarely came. She sent them back to their rooms to rest. She was busy just now and didn't have time to talk to Su Peijian. She wanted to show off in front of old Master Hua, so she let her be. When she was done, she suddenly thought of Su Peijian. Didn't that woman just say that she would help her? Where did she go? She called Xiao Xia and asked her. She sneered inwardly. She really had to give up on Su Peijian. She called her help by serving a hangover soup? Lu Tongjia really didn't like Su Peijian's opportunism. not to mention working with Su Peixian. It was true that she didn't like Su Qingsang, but her mind was very clear. She waved her hand and asked Xiao Xia to get to work. She seemed to suddenly think of something. Xiao Jiang. Zhang Yichen, he seems to have drunk a lot. Did you send him some hangover soup? I did. I sent it with Miss Su. Young Master Hua is taking care of him in his room. Hua Jingyao was taking care of Zhang Yichen in his room? Lu Tongjia suddenly felt a little suffocated when she thought of the photos Xiao Jiang had taken. She waved her hand and asked Xiao Xia to leave. Everyone had been arranged. For those who didn't want to sleep, there were different functional rooms in the Hua family for them to move around. She looked upstairs and finally made a turn in the corridor, planning to go to Zhang Yichen's room. But she didn't expect that when she walked over, the guest room was empty. There was no one in it. She immediately called Xiao Xia and asked where Zhang Yichen was. Xiao Xia only said that young Master Hua was taking care of Zhang Yichen, but she didn't say which room he was in. Hearing Lu Tongjia's question, she thought she was worried about Hua Jinyao. She told Lu Tongjia that Zhang Yichen was in the room next to Hua Jinyao's. Lu Tongjia's face became more and more gloomy. She naturally wouldn't think that this was Hua Jinyao's habit. She thought that it must be Su Qingsang's idea. She put her husband in the room next to her own. That was enough. Hua Jinyao was still there. How could Su Qingsang be so shameless? She was angry. Without thinking, she went upstairs to Hua Jinyao's room. She almost had the urge to tell Hua Jinyao about Zhang Yichen and Su Qingsang's dirty things. However, when she walked to Zhang Yichen's room, before she could open the door, she saw Su Qingsang rush out of the room. Her clothes were a little messy. Her hair was also messy. When she saw Lu Tongjia, Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment, then her face instantly turned red. Lu Tongjia's expression changed when she saw Su Qingsang's guilty look. She took a step forward and stared at Su Qingsang's face. She still remembered what Xiao Xia said. Hua Jinyao was taking care of Zhang Yichen in the room. Was that Hua Jinyao in the room? But what was Zhang Yichen doing? Wasn't Zhang Yichen in the room too? Auntie. Su Qingsang nodded and was about to go to her room next door. However, Lu Tongjia blocked her way. She glanced into the room. What was going on? Where is Hua Jinyao? Where is he? He's in the room, Su Qingsang said quickly. She walked around Lu Tongjia and was about to leave. Chapter 572. Su Qingsang's attitude made Lu Tongjia even more certain that there was something wrong with Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang, you. Before she could finish her sentence, she saw Zhang Yichen, who was also disheveled, open the door. When he saw Su Qingsang, he held her in his arms. Su Qingsang's whole body froze. She was being held by another man in front of her mother-in-law. And this man was Hua Jinyao's uncle? It couldn't get any more embarrassing. She struggled, trying to get Zhang Yichen to let go of her. However, Zhang Yichen was so strong that she didn't have a chance. Lu Tongjia's face turned green when she saw what was happening. What are you doing? Auntie, it's not what you think. Su Qingsang was so embarrassed. She didn't understand how things had turned out like this. Hua Jinyao said he was going to sleep, and he really fell asleep with her in his arms. The problem was that she didn't want to sleep today. Not only did she not want to sleep, but she was also very energetic. After Hua Jinyao fell asleep, she picked up her professional book and continued reading. However, her phone rang after a short while. It was Shi Mingwan. Su Qingsang didn't think much about it because she didn't want to wake Hua Jinyao up. She walked out of the room with her phone and stood at the end of the corridor. It was the study and there was no one there. It was a good place for her to talk to Shi Mingwan. She could feel that Shi Mingwan was in a bad mood. In fact, Shi Mingwan was in a bad mood. She had gone to France to participate in the local design competition. After the preliminary round, she had participated in the semi-finals. She had the greatest hope of making it to the finals. Even if Shi Mingwan couldn't win a place in the final, it was an affirmation of her ability to participate in the competition. Shi Mingwan was still very young. She was already very happy that she had made it this far. However, extreme joy turned to sorrow. She didn't expect that she would be successful in her career, but frustrated in her love life. Ever since she accidentally got involved with Zhang Haoze, she knew that Chen Feifei was with Zhang Haoze. She tried her best to resist. She didn't want to be a mistress. However, she couldn't escape the desire in her heart, nor could she escape the desire to make Zhang Haoze think of her. Coincidentally, she had a relationship with Zhang Haoze. She hadn't figured out where to go with this relationship. She wanted to take the opportunity of going to France to think about it. However, she didn't expect that when she went to France, she would see the news of Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei's engagement in the local media in Lin City. At that moment she almost wanted to abandon the French competition and fly back home. She wanted to ask Jean Hauser personally. Why was he doing this to her? She wanted to ask him if the person he wanted to marry was Qin Feifei, then what was she? If he was just playing with her, why wouldn't he let her go? But in the end he couldn't bring himself to ask those questions. Because she couldn't contact him at all. At first he just didn't pick up her calls. Later his phone was turned off. Shi Mingwan lowered her head. She couldn't tell what she was feeling, but she felt uncomfortable. He had no one to talk to about this kind of discomfort, let alone to his own family. After thinking about it for a long time, she could only call Su Qingsang to confide in her, even though she hadn't slept all night. Su Qingsang picked up Shi Mingwan's call and sensed something unusual in her tone. She took the phone to the study to answer the call. Shi Mingwan was about to say something, but she couldn't say it. Even if it was her best friend, she couldn't say that she had become someone else's mistress. Moreover, she had been willing to be a mistress from the beginning. Seriously speaking, what right did she have to criticize Jean Hauser? Shi Mingwan didn't know where to tell Su Qingsang what was on her mind. She only told Su Qingsang some happy things in France. Su Qingsang sensed that something was wrong. She asked again and again, but Shi Mingwan only said that she was too tired from the competition. She didn't mention a word about Jean Hauser. Su Qingsang couldn't find out the reason, so she could only give up. She hung up and was about to go back when Su Yusin called her again. Today was the Dragon Boat Festival, so she couldn't go back to Lin City for the festival. Su Yusin and Li Qinxue both missed her very much. She hadn't reached her room yet. Because she answered the phone, she stopped for a moment. She didn't know that Zhang Yichen was drugged and was sleeping in the room next door. Hua Jinyao was angry just now, so he left in a hurry and didn't close the door. Su Qingsang's voice wasn't loud, but who was Zhang Yichen? He was a soldier, so his hearing was quite good. More importantly, he was drugged. Anyone's voice sounded like Su Qingsang's voice to him. Previously, Hua Jinyao's knife hand strike had knocked him out for just a moment. His well-trained body made him wake up in the shortest time possible. Although he was awake, he wasn't completely awake. Alcohol and drugs, plus Hua Jinyao's chop just now. He was more and more immersed in his own hallucination. At that moment he heard Su Qingsang's voice. He stood up and walked out of the door, wanting to hear more clearly. The door opened. Su Qingsang was standing at the door talking on the phone. As soon as she hung up the phone with Su Yusin, Zhang Yichen put his arms around her waist. Su Qingsang was caught off guard by someone hugging her from behind. She was startled. She was already at the door of the room. At first she thought it was a prank by Hua Jinyao. Jinyao, what are you doing? They were in the hallway. Before she could finish, Hua Jinyao had already put his arms around her waist and brought her back to the room. Su Qingsang realized something was wrong almost as soon as she entered the room. The person behind her wasn't Hua Jinyao. If it wasn't Hua Jinyao, then who was it? She struggled, but her body was held down by Zhang Yichen. He mumbled something, but Su Qingsang didn't hear it clearly. In fact, Zhang Yichen was calling her name. But Su Qingsang didn't hear it clearly. She only heard Zhang Yichen's voice. She didn't need to hear to know that this room belonged to Zhang Yichen. He was drunk. That was Su Qingsang's first reaction. After realizing that, she forced herself to calm down. Uncle, you're drunk. Let me go. Zhang Yichen held her tightly. The hallucination in front of him became real. He turned her body around. Suddenly, Su Qingsang made eye contact with Zhang Yichen. She was startled by him. What a pair of red eyes. They were very red. Uncle? Zhang Yichen's breath reeked of alcohol. Su Qingsang turned her face away uncomfortably. She didn't think too much about it. She just thought that Zhang Yichen was drunk. Zhang Yichen stared at the hallucination in front of him. His mind was blank and confused. His reason and his desire were fighting in his heart. The fragrance of the person in his arms was so real. It was so real that he almost thought that it wasn't an illusion. But even if it was an illusion, he didn't want to, because it was an offense. Zhang Yichen fought with himself. In the end, he could only hold the person in his arms tightly. He thought that it was an illusion. But it didn't work. Instead, the smell made him more and more tempted. Su Qingsang. Those two words flashed through his mind again. He couldn't say it out loud. He could only murmur it to himself. Su Qingsang couldn't hear it clearly. She didn't want to hear it clearly. Uncle, let me go. Zhang Yichen lowered his head, wanting to take a deep breath of her scent. Su Qingsang was startled. Without any hesitation, she raised her foot and kicked Zhang Yichen's calf. If it were any other time, she wouldn't have been able to do that. But today Zhang Yichen was drugged. He was obviously out of his mind. He had also tried his best to protect her, which allowed Su Qingsang to escape from his arms. Su Qingsang had been hugged and pressed against by Zhang Yichen. Her hair was messy, and her clothes weren't as tidy as before. However, she didn't expect to run into Lu Tongjia as soon as she went out. The situation made her feel so embarrassed that she wanted to die. She didn't have time to explain to Lu Tongjia. Zhang Yichen, who was behind her, rushed out and hugged her again. Lu Tongjia's face turned completely green. She pointed at the two of them, her face livid. Lu Tongjia glared at Su Qingsang. She wanted to burn a hole in Su Qingsang's body with her eyes. What are you doing? Lu Tongjia's face darkened. If her eyes were solid, Su Qingsang would have been crushed into powder. Annie, it's not what you think. Uncle is drunk. Drunk? Lu Tongjia was so angry that she laughed. What a shameless couple. You've done such a shameless thing and you're trying to cover it up? What? Do you think everyone else is stupid? His words were a little harsh, but Su Qingsang couldn't care less now. She struggled, trying to make Zhang Yichen let go of her. However, Zhang Yichen's strength wasn't something she could fight back against. Lu Tongjia's whole body trembled. She pointed at Su Qingsang, feeling very angry. How dare you? This was really going against the heavens. How can you be so shameless? Don't you have any shame? Su Qingsang, don't forget who you are. Of course, Su Qingsang wouldn't forget who she was. She also felt embarrassed. But she didn't want the situation to be like this. Auntie, please do me a favor. It's really not what you think. Uncle is drunk. Huo Jinyao walked out of the room as soon as she finished speaking. He had been sleeping but was woken up by the sudden noise. Hearing Lu Tongjia's suppressed voice, he walked out. He didn't expect to see the scene in front of him. Jinyao. Su Qingsang's face was full of surprise when she saw him. You're here. Come and help me pull uncle away. He's drunk. Huo Jinyao glanced at Su Qingsang, then looked at Zhang Yichen, who was holding her tightly. Drunk? Was he drunk, or was he pretending to be drunk to take advantage of her? Thinking of how Zhang Yichen had mistaken him for Su Qingsang, he couldn't help but feel angry. He took a few steps forward and pulled Su Qingsang away from Zhang Yichen's arms. Without hesitation, he punched Zhang Yichen's cheek. Zhang Yichen didn't wake up after being punched. He stood there and looked at Huo Jinyao, who was in front of him. Without thinking, he hugged him. Huo Jinyao was angry. He raised his hand and punched him again. Zhang Yichen took 2 punches in a row, but he didn't wake up. Instead, he walked towards Huo Jinyao. Su Qingsang had just escaped from Zhang Yichen's hands. She was still in shock. Meeting Lu Tongjia's eyes, she wanted to explain, but she knew that Lu Tongjia had already made up her mind. Lu Tongjia could see it with her own eyes, so Lu Tongjia wouldn't listen to her. She didn't want to explain to Lu Tongjia. As long as Huo Jinyao believed her, that was enough. She didn't know how Zhang Yichen became like this. She turned to look at Zhang Yichen. He was drunk, probably because he was drunk. However, when she saw Zhang Yichen stubbornly holding on to Huo Jinyao after Huo Jinyao punched him a few times, she began to feel that something was wrong. She was a doctor, even though she majored in obstetrics and gynecology. However, Zhang Yichen didn't look like he was drunk. Seeing that his face was red and he still wanted to hold on to Huo Jinyao, she suddenly stepped forward. Jinyao, wait. Stop hitting him. She was pleading for Zhang Yichen? Huo Jinyao's face darkened. He almost wanted to punch Zhang Yichen a few more times. Jinyao. There's something wrong with your uncle. She stepped forward and grabbed Huo Jinyao. See if you can restrain him. I'll check on him. Huo Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang. Her face was serious and she didn't look like she was joking. He looked at Zhang Yichen. He seemed to realize that something was wrong with Zhang Yichen. He stepped forward and knocked Zhang Yichen out with a karate chop. Zhang Yichen was hit a few times and this time he passed out completely. Huo Jinyao caught Zhang Yichen's body and put him back in the room. Su Qingsang followed him in and opened Zhang Yichen's eyes immediately. His pupils were dilated unnaturally, and he seemed to be on a rampage. Maybe it was because of the alcohol, but she also knew that there could be another reason. She had seen a pregnant woman before. That woman was pregnant, but she didn't know that she was pregnant. Someone gave her a drink and she drank it. Later, she found out that the drink had been spiked with hallucinogens. Hallucinogens, ecstasy pills, and other drugs could sometimes cause a reaction similar to that caused by alcohol. Inexperienced doctors wouldn't be able to tell. I suspect that he drank something he shouldn't have. Su Qingsang had only suspected it, but now she could basically confirm it. She looked up at Huo Jinyao and said, Jinyao, I need a doctor in this field. I want to take a blood test for him. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang and thought of Zhang Yichen's usual behavior. He had always been calm and rational, almost to the point of restraint. Today was indeed a little strange. He nodded and called the doctor. There were so many guests in the Hua family, so it wasn't a good time to send Zhang Yichen to the hospital. Lu Tongjia came in as well. She looked at the two people in front of her and sneered. Su Qingsang, don't try to confuse us. It's obvious that you two are in cahoots. You're talking nonsense to cover your tracks. I'm telling you it's useless. Su Qingsang glanced at Lu Tongjia and didn't pay much attention to her. She looked at Hua Jinyao with expectation. As long as he believed in her, that was enough. She didn't need the whole world to agree with her. Hua Jinyao stepped forward and held her hand. He looked at Zhang Yichen, who was lying on the bed. He started to have the same worries as Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang tightened her grip on his hand. Although she looked calm, she was still afraid that Hua Jinyao would misunderstand her. I believe in you. Hua Jinyao's simple words sounded powerful and resonant. Su Qingsang smiled and held Hua Jinyao's hand with both hands. The scene in front of her eyes was so dazzling. Lu Tongjia almost couldn't stand it anymore. Good, very good indeed. I know that I have a loving son, but I didn't expect you to be so loving. She looked back and forth between Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang, then finally looked at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao, you're a grown man and married. Can you not be so naive? Hua Jinyao held her in his arms and sighed softly. My mom is here for me. Don't worry. I understand, but I still want to say that there's nothing between uncle and me. There's nothing between us. I know. I believe you. This was the second time Hua Jinyao said that he believed her. Su Qingsang couldn't help but reach out to hug him. Her eyes were gentle and her expression was full of satisfaction. Thank you, Jinyao. It felt so good to be trusted so much. Hua Jinyao hugged her. What he didn't say was that he did believe Su Qingsang. As for Zhang Yichen, he didn't want to know whether it was because he was drunk or because of something else that made him lose his composure. When Lu Tongjia returned to her room, she felt a headache. She didn't look well. She was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Hua Mingguang wasn't in the room. He was in his study with Hua Yangyuan's two sons. Hua Yangyuan's two sons, Hua Mingfan and Hua Mingqi, worked in different areas. Tianyu Group had invested in both areas. They were usually busy with work and rarely met each other. Now that they were together, Hua Mingguang naturally wanted to have a good chat with his two cousins. Lu Tongjia didn't have anyone to talk her out of it. She just couldn't take it anymore. She hadn't even thought of showing Hua Jinyao those ugly photos she had taken, but he was already taking her side without asking. Even though he saw Su Qingsang and Zhang Yichen hugging each other with his own eyes, how could he find an excuse for Zhang Yichen? It was ridiculous and infuriating. She hadn't calmed down yet. She was still thinking about how to make Hua Jinyao face reality. On the other side, Hua Jinyao got the result after the doctor came and took Zhang Yichen's blood for a blood test. Zhang Yichen was indeed drugged. Su Qingsang looked at the result and nodded. She looked serious when she met Hua Jinyao's eyes. Jinyao, it's just as I thought. Uncle was drugged. It seems to be a hallucinogen. That would explain why Zhang Yichen was reacting like this. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang. She looked calm. She attributed all of Zhang Yichen's behavior to the fact that he was drugged and drunk. However, he knew that wasn't the whole truth. There was nothing wrong with Su Qingsang, but there must be something wrong with Zhang Yichen. The drug and alcohol only made Zhang Yichen's true thoughts come to life. It didn't mean that it didn't exist. Zhang Yichen really did have that kind of feelings for Su Qingsang. He was very sure about that now. Why would he be drugged? Who drugged him? Everyone clearly ate together before. Su Qingsang couldn't figure it out. She couldn't help but look at Hua Jinyao with confusion in her eyes. Hua Jinyao stopped thinking. He didn't tell Su Qingsang about Zhang Yichen's feelings for her. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.